the Cardcaptor Wizard of Hogwarts. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 226 Storm is Coming. Without Bernard's description, Adam knew what the Ministry of Magic was planning. Everyone supports Hogwarts being neutral out of love for children, but Harry Potter is special. Although he is still a child, he is also the chosen one, the boy who lived, and the savior. When the Ministry of Magic suffers successive setbacks and everyone feels that their life safety is threatened, and the Ministry of Magic hints that things can turn around with the help of Harry Potter, everyone will feel that Harry Potter should be allowed to participate as an exception. It is also acceptable in war. The Death Eater's side would also support and fan the flames, because Voldemort would absolutely love to see a Harry Potter exposed outside the protection of Hogwarts. As for how having Harry Potter sucked into the vortex would benefit the Ministry of Magic, on the one hand, Harry Potter, the savior, is an excellent target to blame, and at the same time, a child poses no threat to the Ministry of Magic and can be easily manipulated. Beyond that, Harry Potter can be special or not. When everyone wants Harry Potter to be sucked into the whirlpool, he is the special one. Even if Hogwarts is neutral, they should not hold on to their savior, but if something happened to Harry Potter, then he would not be special. A student at Hogwarts, a barely grown child, was killed by a cruel, mysterious man. How could Hogwarts continue to remain neutral, huh? Moral kidnapping, putting down the Daily Prophet. Adam smiled. Professor Dumbledore may accept this approach and find other ways to break the situation, but I don't accept this approach. So, how do you want to solve it? Everyone looked at Adam. They knew Adam's follow-up plan, so his image in everyone's eyes should be quite important to Adam. Everyone looked at Adam, who looked a little excited as he took out the Staff of Darkness, and a question mark appeared above his head. Of course, no matter what the outside world says, Hogwarts will remain as it is. Students should behave like students. What does saving the world have to do with them? As Adam spoke, he stood up and waved the dark staff, and the spikes symbolizing the sun's rays made an air-piercing explosion. When external public opinion intensified, and Scrimgeour and the others came to Hogwarts, forced to do so by the crowd's voice, they directly summoned a 100-foot-tall creature covered in black scales, with lava and crystal flowing in its veins. The dragon's translucent chest exudes light blue light with a Cherenkov effect, telling them what sleeping dragons do not disturb means. Everyone? In this case, wouldn't Hogwarts be on the opposite side of the Ministry of Magic in public opinion? So, what's the problem? Adam shrugged and sat back down, looking at how the Ministry of Magic is desperately trying to catch Death Eaters. It's not certain how long Scrimgeour can survive, and whether he can survive to arrive at Hogwarts, but there is a high probability that it is possible. At least Voldemort and Scrimgeour have the same position on forcing Harry Potter to leave Hogwarts. Before Scrimgeour's plan clearly fails, Voldemort will probably suppress him first. Anger. The level of difficulty between killing a Harry Potter in the Ministry of Magic and entering Hogwarts to kill Harry Potter is very different. If the conditions for the former can be created, Voldemort he would definitely not be stingy with a few captured Death Eaters. And don't forget that it will be Eugene who will be the Minister of Magic in the future. Everything in the Ministry of Magic can be redefined. History will ultimately be written by the winner. Adam leaned back in his chair confidently, and we will definitely be the winners. After that day, the Ministry of Magic seemed very calm, and it was obvious that they were still making preparations for future plans. However, the so-called calm is only from Adam's perspective. For most of the ignorant people in the wizarding world, this period of time in the Ministry of Magic can be described as good news comes frequently. One after another, criminals were arrested. Even if they were just committing petty thefts, they were labeled as Death Eaters and made the headlines of the Daily Prophet. The land prices in Diagon Alley have even increased a lot because of this, but Adam wasn't angry. This was all temporary, and he would be caught off guard if the land prices in Diagon Alley suddenly dropped, because Mundungus Fletcher was arrested. Yes, this former member of the Order of the Phoenix who couldn't help but sneak around in the past, and who changed his mind after being subdued by Adam, was arrested as a Death Eater, and he only had time to use Adam's message method to leave a message. Boss, help me. How should I put it? Considering this guy's usual image in the outside world, Adam didn't feel too surprised after personally going to Azkaban, which was now guarded by people from the Ministry of Magic, to fish out the people The guy immediately started to complain about Adam. Boss. They are so unreasonable. They attack as soon as they come up, and they also do a sneak attack. 7 rounds of disarming spells and 4 rounds of stun spells. They are not hitting me here, they are clearly hitting you, Adams. Eyes gradually became unkind, and Mundungus quickly changed the subject, the most loyal subordinate, looking back. Adam shook his head. Well, considering that you have done so many dirty jobs for so many years, it is not unjust to spend a few days squatting in Azkaban. During this time, go to Hogsmeade Village. The land prices there will have some impact. Take the opportunity to those pieces of land were sold out, centered on Storm Restaurant and Fantasy Dessert Workshop, after Hogwarts fully demonstrates its powerful military power. Before the war completely burns to Hogwarts, the land price of Hogsmeade Village will rise. Before that, when the Ministry of Magic and the public opinion of the entire British wizarding world oppress Hogwarts, the land price of Hogsmeade Village will fall to a low point that Adam can be satisfied with. As for the problem of inflation caused by buying a lot of land, not to mention that many people in the wizarding world will die next. It is normal for the Ministry of Magic to expand its power in various aspects in order to strengthen the protection of the wizarding world. For example, setting up police stations to protect wizards everywhere, such as starting to collect taxes, such as taking back the right to mint coins from the goblins. In this way, this inflation is nothing. If we really want to tear our faces with the goblins who control the economy now, the money we can dig out of the goblins' pockets will be much more, and we can replan the economy. Isn't this account balanced? As the days passed, reports of casualties began to appear in the daily reports from the Ministry of Magic, and some worried voices appeared among the laughter. Those who could really see the situation were all holding their breath, because they knew that the real storm was about to approach. It was also at this time that Harry knocked on the door of Gandalf, the new headmaster's office, for the first time. Chapter 227. Harry, I am so powerful now. Professor Gandalf, Harry Potter wants to see you. The dog-headed man at the door came to the picture frame in the headmaster's office through the portrait and reported to Adam. Harry, Adam couldn't help but frown. Could it be? Well, this is very Gryffindor. Let him in. The dog-headed man opened the door for Harry, and Harry was able to enter the headmaster's office. The first time he stepped into the door, Harry couldn't help but look around first, wanting to see what the difference was between the office and when Professor Dumbledore was the headmaster. However, Harry was a little disappointed to find that the entire office seemed to be no different. He could only find that the original position of Fawkes had been moved away, and there was only a portrait of Professor Dumbledore on the wall. Turning his head to look at the headmaster's desk, as expected, he didn't see Professor Gandalf, only a ball of fire burning quietly there. After the day of the parent-teacher meeting, everyone knew that Professor Gandalf was special. Harry was not surprised but relieved that Professor Gandalf took the initiative to not meet with him. After all, the result of his practice of brain occlumency last year was that he was deceived by Voldemort's soul letter, and almost got his godfather involved. In the end, he was immersed in grief for nearly a whole holiday before Professor Dumbledore told him the truth. Professor Gandalf, thank you for saving Sirius. Harry took the initiative to speak to the flame. You're welcome, Harry. I just happened to be there. I heard Dumbledore tell me the whole story, and I hope that lesson will teach you to learn to do things within your ability. Gandalf's gentle voice came from the flame. So, besides thanking me, do you have any other reasons? Not. Surprisingly, Harry told his plan how to say it. This kid still hasn't learned his lesson. He thinks that the Ministry of Magic was unreliable before just because of Fudge, and now it will be better with a new minister. He was fooled by the things in the Daily Prophet. Harry's plan, in a word, fantasy. All of Harry's plans are based on sufficient optimism, not to mention that he knows too little about the current situation, not to mention that the Ministry of Magic couldn't defeat Voldemort at all. Even if Voldemort was lured out, the Ministry of Magic would be destroyed without Professor Dumbledore, not to mention how much say he had. How could he be confident that the Ministry of Magic would abide by the rules and do what they said in the Daily Prophet? That was not even a promise, just a certain order claimed. Just talking about the first step of this plan, leaving Hogwarts, Harry couldn't do it on his own. It's school time now. I'm afraid you can't leave Hogwarts without a reason. Gandalf's voice sounded faintly, interrupting Harry's dream. Of course, if your guardian is willing to write a letter to support you to leave the campus and suspend your studies to carry out your plan, then I have no right to object. I remember your guardian is Petunia Evans, right? But since the other party is a muggle and you have a godfather, if Dumbledore is willing to guarantee, I can recognize Sirius Black's guardianship over you. If Sirius and Dumbledore both agree to let Harry go, then Adam will not insist on stopping him. He has always respected the fate of people who have little to do with him. He and Harry are not so familiar with each other, so he has to do something thankless. Harry's smile froze on his face. Obviously, his plan was not recognized by the Order of the Phoenix. The Order of the Phoenix and Adam were in agreement on not letting Harry get into too much danger before graduation. Originally, Professor Dumbledore was slightly shaken, thinking that Harry could already shoulder certain responsibilities and that time was running out, but now Professor Dumbledore learned from Adam that the 5 Horcruxes had been solved and the 7th Horcrux had been made, then there was no need to rush. Everything could be planned after Snape confirmed the whereabouts of the 7th Horcrux. Harry should go back to class. Although he was rejected, Harry still refused to give up for a while. He felt that now was a great time, but Adam did not have the patience to fool around with him. This is not the small fights you have encountered in the past few years, but a real war. Do you think you have enough ability to intervene? Do you think you are strong enough? The flames rose, and Gandalf strode out. When Harry saw his expressionless face, he could not help but take a half step back, but then Harry raised his head and took a step forward unyieldingly. During this period, he made rapid progress under the guidance of Professor Grindelwald and the training of the Forbidden Forest. He is now able to enter the 5th area and is among the best among all students. He is now terribly strong. In response, Gandalf, who was using legitimacy, sneered, "You can't even move freely in the 5th area of the Forbidden Forest. You will be a living target after leaving Hogwarts. You can't do anything except become a burden to Dumbledore." Is Harry strong? Even Harry, who defeated Voldemort in the 7th year, was not strong. In peacetime, his combat power might be above most wizards, and he was also a good player among Aurors, but that was all. Harry was able to defeat Voldemort thanks to his special attack of Voldemort. First, Lily exchanged her life for Harry's, and the love protection spell she left behind could protect Harry until he came of age. During this period, Voldemort would be injured even if he touched Harry. Voldemort used Harry's blood to revive, which did allow him to touch Harry, but he also preserved the protection magic that Lily left when Harry was a minor, and became Harry's blood relative, so that even after Harry came of age, the protection spell was still effective. Then, no matter what spell the twin wands cast, they would only become a confrontation, and the real owner of the old wand was Harry and would not hurt Harry. Therefore, no matter how Voldemort threw Avada Kedavra in the early stage, he would only fight against Harry. In the later stage, after one Avada Kedavra, Harry went around in the misty illusion without any harm, but Voldemort's own soul fragment was killed. In addition to this bunch of buffs that were useless to anyone except Voldemort, Harry could only show off his superb disarming spell, and he was even unable to do it when facing multiple Death Eaters. It can be said that the combat power of wizards has experienced a cliff-like decline after the death of Voldemort, Dumbledore and Grindelwald in the original book. No one can use magic as well as they do, and they can remain calm in the face of dozens of experienced Aurors, but Adam will not let this happen now. With Adam's current thinking speed, a little thought fluctuation does not even take a second. He looked at Harry, who still had dissatisfaction in his eyes, and said, "Cast a spell on me, Harry. I will show you how big this world is, and then, go back and prepare. I remember you have a transfiguration class in the afternoon. Are you sure you want to be here, Professor Gandalf?" Although Harry was a little unconvinced and a little tempted, he looked around with some worry. "I'm afraid I'll break these things." Chapter 228 Harry and number 039's heart collapses. Hearing Harry's words, Gandalf just felt like laughing. He looked around. "Don't worry, you won't be compensated for breaking things. Come on, cast a spell on me, Harry." Heard the disdain for him from Professor Gandalf's tone, and couldn't help but feel angry in his heart. So he took a deep breath, pulled out his wand and began to recite the spell. Collapse. Grindelwald's teaching was indeed effective. At least now the students could pull out their wands and recite spells and cast spells much faster. After all, when the magical animals in the Forbidden Forest jump out to attack you, they won't wait for you to slowly pull out your wand and recall the knowledge points in Class A magic spell hit Gandalf. But when it was about to hit Gandalf, it had an invisible barrier. Is it the Iron Armor Curse? And it's a silent spell? No, there's a wandless spell. Harry was a little dazed for a moment. During this time, they happened to be learning the application of the silent charm, and he had not yet fully mastered it. The wandless charm was only heard of this technique The professor said that this advanced technique does not require mastery. Go on, Harry, Gandalf said calmly. I think Professor Flitwick and Professor Grindelwald should have taught you more than just this spell, right? He did use the iron armor curse, and Harry was not Professor Dumbledore, so the magic he used was not so much that he had to use a shield to block it. Harry came to his senses and took another deep breath, this time to calm down. He was distracted just now. Harry, who was experienced in many battles in the Forbidden Forest, knew that this was inappropriate. Fortunately, the person facing him was Professor Gandalf and not a leopard cat or some kind of fire dragon. But Professor Gandalf asked him to cast a spell on him. Did he actually mean it literally? Instead of fighting yourself, Harry got a glimpse of the true intention of Gandalf's words from Gandalf's behavior of not fighting back, but allowing him to attack. He actually meant to let him attack. Is this because you are confident that you can't hurt him no matter what? Although Harry realized that there was still a gap in strength between himself and Professor Gandalf after the first stun spell, Harry was still angry at Professor Gandalf's overconfidence. In fact, Harry can't be blamed. Harry has never seen any big scenes at all. Even if he faced Voldemort, he was either knocked down with a move or chased. He didn't know what those truly powerful wizards could do. To what extent under this situation, and Grindelwald personally told him that his strength had reached the standard to become an Auror, it would naturally make him feel a little inflated. But what Harry didn't know was that the Aurors he regarded as targets were at the level of small soldiers in front of wizards like Grindelwald. Not to mention that they could be completely ignored, but until the number of them reached a certain level, they could only be said to be useless. No, even a veteran Auror who has experienced hundreds of battles can easily be ignored by a dozen or 20 Grindelwalds, and they can leave when they need to chat. Not to mention the bastards like the British Ministry of Magic. So Adam is now giving Harry this lesson, telling him how high the sky is and how thick the earth is. Harry used almost all the magic he knew, even mischievous spells like Tarantella or sticking a stick in his front teeth, but all ended in vain. Harry also knew that most of the spells would definitely have no effect, but he still threw them all as if he was stunned, trying to break through the defense in front of Professor Gandalf. But an armored bodyguard was as insurmountable as a chasm, blocking all of Harry's spells just a few inches in front of Gandalf. That's enough, Harry, Expelliarmus. Although Gandalf didn't have a wand in his hand, Harry still used one of his most skilled spells. Looking at Harry, who was in a state of madness, Adam raised his hand and blasted Harry away with a shockwave. The severe pain and suffocation of his back hitting the door made Harry finally wake up. It's almost time, you should go to class. With a faint word, Gandalf disappeared into the flames. After a few seconds, Harry stood up and walked out of the principal's office in a daze. Adam, are you hitting Harry too hard like this? After Harry left, Professor Dumbledore's portrait sighed. A small tree cannot grow straight unless it is repaired, and the strength I used just now is definitely not stronger than Voldemort's. Adam shook his head. It's just an armor for protection. If it were Voldemort, he might not be able to use it without a wand because he wasn't familiar enough with it, but there would still be no problem at all in being silent. Children today are too short-sighted. Maybe we should let them see the real strong people. Adam frowned. To achieve this level, of course it has to be real. The exhibition game would be too fake to be effective, but in this way there is no way to ensure the safety of every student. Forget it. Hogwarts is just a school after all, and it's still basic education. When preparing for higher level education in the future, the majors can be divided into more details, and then targeted training can be done. A bachelor's degree may not be of use, but when wizards study for master's or even doctorate degrees, the creatures, or monsters, in special areas of the Forbidden Forest will allow wizards to experience the thrill of wandering on the edge of life and death. In addition to those special magical animals, there are also some experimental subjects of Adam in the special area. Bernard's attention was focused on the former under Adam's words. Little did he know that the former could only live in the marginal area and tremble in fear in the special area, and the latter was the real ruler of the special area. Those monsters that should not exist in this world all come from Adam's research on magic. Things created by the creation card will disappear after the creation card is closed. So will the children born from the hybridization of the creatures created by the creation card and the real creatures disappear after the creation card is closed. After Adam's research, it was found that the creatures were transformed into corpses. They just died in the material dimension and completely lost the original characteristics of the creatures. So is it possible to transform creatures above 2 dimensions into corpses, thereby creating undead creatures with wisdom and special abilities? Magical animals seem to be born with the ability to use some magic. How is it done? Can magical animals that are born with the ability to cast specific magic be created through research? Adam found out through his research that there seems to be no reproductive isolation between magical animals, so can big cards and small cards. After some recollection, Adam scratched his head at that time. He was too involved in the cultivation game. The various works he had seen in his previous life turned into a constant stream of inspiration that collided and burst out in his mind, and these inspirations might produce some unexpected surprises in the process of realization as a result. In addition to those in the special area now, there are some little guys that he dare not throw into the special area, so he can only seal them up and carry them with him. I can't bear to kill them. After all, they're all my hard work. If I let them go, not to mention wizards or muggles, the earth may not be able to bear it. I am so confused. Chapter 229 The Confidence of the Mastermind. After learning what happened in Hogwarts from the portrait, Professor Dumbledore, Sidney and Adam were on the same side regarding the treatment of Harry, and what made him more concerned was what Adam said at the end: the combat power of the wizarding world is being degraded. Dumbledore knows this very well, but think about those people who are not willing to accept ordinary knowledge and delve deeper into magic himself. Grindelwald, Voldemort. Needless to say, Grindelwald and Voldemort want to create a world where wizards rule muggles, while the other wants to rule the world themselves. He himself wants to stop Grindelwald, but is he a good person? At Grindelwald's invitation, Dumbledore agreed to join him and create a world where wizards rule muggles. Did he know at the time that many people would die if he did so? Of course he knew, but at that time he believed that he was on the right path and some sacrifices were necessary for the greater good. As a result, before the plan could be further developed, Ariana's accidental killing made Professor Dumbledore realize firsthand the pain that those who were sacrificed in this plan would feel to their families. Professor Dumbledore, who deeply felt that he should not do to others what he did not want others to do to him, parted ways with Grindelwald at the time and began to work hard to stop Grindelwald's plan, except for the 3 of them who want to change the world structure. Most of the other wizards in the wizarding world are in a somewhat flat atmosphere, and their strength is enough. It can be seen from this that the generally low strength in the wizarding world is not only limited by talent, but also affected by inner laziness. After thinking about the situation of the 3 of them, Professor Dumbledore believed that to live in the wizarding world, the strength of an aura was more than enough. Those who would continue to study magic in depth above this all had the ambition to change the world. What about the other way around? Now Adam wants to improve everyone's strength. When the wizards master stronger strength, will they also have ambitions that they didn't have before? Will those already ambitious people cause greater harm after mastering more powerful power? Professor Dumbledore rubbed his brows. He was already over 100 years old and did not have the energy or ability to deal with Adam, who had just grown up. He could only hope that Adam would still be able to control the situation by then. If Adam knew what Professor Dumbledore was thinking, he would definitely answer him clearly. You are absolutely right. What you are worried about will definitely happen. As the saying goes, when people have a sharp weapon in mind and have a murderous intention, when people have mastered powerful power, Superman is a rare occurrence, and it is normal for the motherland to be the only one. Although the power of the order side such as auras will also increase accordingly, the damage caused in this process will definitely be greater than when everyone is just a novice. But this is no reason to let the wizarding world's combat power continue to degrade. First of all, there are more than just wizards in this world. If things continue like this, wizards will be lying on the dissection table of muggles before Harry and the others die of old age. Secondly, the magical knowledge is there. Grindelwald, Dumbledore and Voldemort were able to reach where they are today not by relying on the teachings of other powerful people, but by learning on their own. If a wizard with sufficient ambition and talent is born in the future, it is not difficult to imagine that there will be another bloody storm. At that time, it will not be so easy to pursue the righteous protagonist who is one step behind in strength. But not everyone can be like Professor Dumbledore. By chance, he learned about Grindelwald's ambitions when he was still young. As he caught up, his strength grew at the same time as his opponent, and he was even able to overwhelm him. Finally, there's Adam. Ever since he came into contact with magic, Adam has never stopped studying magic for a day. With his talent and accumulation, he is confident that the wizards who will come after him will not be able to beat him no matter how strong they are. Any man behind the scenes who continues to climb up and thinks he is on top of the world will find that there is already a black hand above the wizarding world covering the sky. At this moment, The real mastermind was waiting anxiously in his bedroom after leaving Harry that day. Adam fully expected the Ministry of Magic to come to visit, but unfortunately, there was no news until Christmas during this period, except for a few enthusiastic wizards who loudly appealed in the Daily Prophet. Adam did not receive any letters from parents. Nor did he find out that the Ministry of Magic had taken any further action. That's right. After all, you want a child to leave Hogwarts and enter danger. Unless they really feel that their lives are threatened, no one is willing to be the one who stands out. Adam sighed. Although his personality is not that flamboyant, he has such a handsome stage and even prepared his lines, but he has been unable to go on stage. He felt like there were ants crawling on him. Zio. Hey, it seems we have to wait a while longer. Adam sighed and touched the small creature in his hand that was a cross between Godzilla, Nothurian, the Black Dragon, and the Black Dragon of the Hebridean Islands. The little guy, who had gathered his energy and was shrunk, opened his mouth and bit Adam's fingertips without really exerting any force. Then he stuck out his tongue and licked Adam's fingertips a few times. Fortunately, the abilities and personalities of the creatures created by the card creation can be completely set by Adam himself. Otherwise, not to mention the obedient little guy now, it would be a problem for the previous ones to mate with a weak Hebridean Islands Black Dragon. Adam calmed his slightly accelerated heartbeat, put the Black Dragon named Zio-Ohai on the tea tray at the bedside, and picked up Zio-Ok on the bed to take a sip. It's so cold, and it has to be furry and comfortable to touch. Zio-Ok had squinted his eyes comfortably, but suddenly felt a chill on his back. He turned his head and found that Zio-Ohai was lying on the bed, staring at him faintly, with a faint light between the scales and the biological reactor on his chest. Zio-Ok. After stroking Zio-Ok's blown-up hair twice, Adam turned his head and looked at Zio-Ohai and said, Zio-Ohai, don't show your teeth to your uncle. Although Zio-Ok and Sibby are Adam's pets, they are actually guardian beasts that have signed a contract with Adam, so they are equals. Adam, who raised Zio-Ohai as his son, naturally classified Zio-Ok as Zio-Ohai's uncle. Hearing this, Zio-Ohai straightened his upper body and looked at Adam pitifully. Weak, pitiful, and wrong. JPG. Having seen the other person's true form, Zio-Ok knew that her true form was too small for the other person's teeth. Little cutie, these scales are icy cold. I'll hug you again in summer. Adam touched Zio-Ohai's head as a comfort. As for the fact that Zio-Ohai's body has a lot of energy, enough to turn his entire body into a heater, feeling Zio-Ohai's hair passing through his fingers, Adam narrowed his eyes and selectively ignored this point. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelist. There you'll find the original version of this story, and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 230, Born Evil, Poor Malfoy Kid. Looking forward to. The Christmas holiday passed in Adam's expectation. He took advantage of Christmas to go back home and chatted with his parents about his current situation. The restaurant was in full swing, the dessert workshop was also very popular, and everything went very smoothly. Adam wasn't the only one disappointed this Christmas. The people in the Order of the Phoenix kept a close eye on Harry. From the moment Harry stepped off the Hogwarts Express to the time he stepped back onto the Hogwarts Express, there were dedicated people to pick him up and drop him off. They were Tonks and Kingsley. No chance was found, so he could only return to Hogwarts obediently. Harry knew that he could not leave Hogwarts secretly without Professor Gandalf's permission. He could not even go to Hogsmeade Village. All the doors of Hogwarts were enchanted, and he could not use the invisibility cloak. There's no way to sneak out, not even through the secret passage. Sirius was now unwilling to sign permission for him to go to Hogsmeade, saying that Harry could tell him anything he wanted through the double mirror. Harry, what are you thinking about? Hermione looked at him doubtfully, and her voice brought Harry back to his senses. Oh, it's nothing. Harry was a little irritated because Hermione and the others didn't think what he had proposed before was a good idea. Everyone ignores his ideas. Although his strength is indeed not strong enough, he is already an adult and can at least contribute to the fight against Voldemort instead of hiding in Hogwarts as a protected little rabbit. Harry tore up the Daily Prophet with an expressionless expression. Then, let's set off quickly. Class is about to begin. What they were about to take was a special elective course designed to teach young wizards over the age of 17 to practice apparition and apparition, if they were willing out of habit. Hermione opened her mouth to educate the two of them. At this time, parts of Hogwarts will be briefly de-enchanted with anti-apparition, allowing us to practice in school. Disable anti-apparition. Harry caught the key words keenly. That being the case, if he could learn to apparate before the end of this course, would he have a chance to directly use apparition to leave Hogwarts? The idea was beautiful, but the reality was cruel. Only when he really started learning about apparition did Harry realize that there was a reason why this course was offered from after the Christmas vacation until the end of the semester. Harry, Professor McGonagall quickly ran over and chanted a spell on his split arm. After a burst of purple smoke, he finally felt his beloved wife again. Remember the 3D principles: destination, determination, and deliberation. Professor Grindelwald was watching the spellcasting of each student from the front. When students appeared to be separated, other professors would step forward to deal with it, and he would give corrective opinions. Harry, don't keep thinking about how you want to disapparate. You are capable enough to do this. Be confident. Determine the goal, and then do it as if you were taking your first step. Harry took a deep breath. He looked at the wooden circle in front of him, took a deep breath, and then, Grindelwald looked at Harry, who really took a step forward and was silent for 2 seconds. That's just a metaphor to help you understand the state of calm, kid. Sorry, Professor Grindelwald. Harry blushed. Professor Grindelwald shook his head and asked him to practice slowly, then turned his eyes to the next student, Mr. Macmillan. Stand firm and don't get distracted. In the end, on the first day, everyone experienced the wonderful feeling of being separated, and some students even almost split up. As for the number of students who succeeded after the first day of study, 0 people. Okay, I admit it's a little hard. In the private room of the Storm restaurant, Cologne took advantage of Adam's presence and tried to apparate again, but the result was that he still went to a different location than one ear. You're already learning fast, Adam helped his ear reset. At least the main part of you got to your destination, didn't it? How long did you study for? Colin looked at Adam curiously. He remembered that Adam had known this trick a long time ago. 5 minutes, maybe. Adam blinked. But we are different. I have learned similar magic through magic props. The difficulty will be much easier if you learn by analogy. And it took me nearly 4 months to learn that magic. Then, my goal is to learn to apparate within 4 months. This shouldn't be difficult. Cologne nodded with his hands on his hips. Adam nodded. I believe you can do it. Cologne had no other problems when performing apparition. It was just that his mind was a little unsteady. His stray thoughts caused him to always miss something. He just needed to practice more. The same is true for Uther and the others. They have some minor problems, and they can learn to apparate and apparate with more practice. Back at Hogwarts, Adam came to the door of the room of requirement. Facts have proved that perhaps young people at this age are restless by nature, and Harry is not the only one who cannot recognize his own abilities. Draco contacted Mr. Borgin and Burke to repair the vanishing cabinet during the Christmas holidays, and picked a day when everyone went to Hogsmeade to move the vanishing cabinet to the room of requirement. As soon as he opened the door, he saw Professor Gandalf standing at the door looking at him. Oh, Draco, I didn't expect you to learn Occlumency well. Did Voldemort help you learn it? It's a pity that he was too impatient. From the time you started learning Occlumency to now, has it been a week? Gandalf shook his head, his face showing disappointment. Why did you choose Voldemort? So, that's it. Lucius Malfoy's little abacus was discovered by Voldemort, and he has now moved into Malfoy Manor. Gandalf's face flashed with some realization. He thought Draco was really a Malfoy kid who was born evil, but it turned out to be like this, which was not surprising after hearing Gandalf's words. Draco's originally pale face suddenly turned pale like a corpse that had been dead for several days. He avoided Professor Gandalf's sight and forced himself not to think about anything. His mind was empty, but his memories still surged up uncontrollably. Just like Lucius couldn't keep the secret in front of Voldemort, the same feeling of powerlessness spread in Draco's heart. The scenes of the Christmas holiday reappeared in front of him: the haggard father, the weak mother, the crazy aunt, and the terrifying man with the scarlet eyes with narrow pupils. Draco collapsed and fell to the ground, trembling at Gandalf in front of him. Seeing Gandalf reaching out to him, Draco subconsciously hugged his head with his hands and huddled on the ground. Don't be afraid, child. Hogwarts is safe. No one will use the Cruciatus curse on you. Chapter 231. Followers revealed. Change. Holding a cup of hot cocoa in his hand, Sitting opposite Gandalf and Grindelwald sitting on the sofa next to him, Draco whispered about everything he encountered at Malfoy Manor after just one Christmas holiday. The cruel reality shattered all his pride. The omnipotent father in his memory was lying at that person's feet, begging for forgiveness. The mother who was always graceful and reserved in his memory was disgraced and was grabbed by her hair and questioned by his aunt, and he himself. It's okay, Draco, you're safe now, although. Draco's voice was choppy, trembling, and unfinished. Adam had successfully learned the whole process from Draco's mind after recalling the past. I have to admit that your father, Mr. Lucius Malfoy, is a father who loves you very much. It was Lucius who proposed to let Draco work for Voldemort. For this reason, he even went so far as to let Draco be branded with a dark mark just so that Draco could return to Hogwarts. Does Voldemort know Lucius's plan? He knew that Lucius also knew that he would know, but Voldemort was confident enough that Draco with a dark mark could not escape his grasp, and both Lucius and Narcissa were in his hands. Even if Lucius and Narcissa had given up their lives, it didn't matter. What mattered was that Voldemort was confident that he would be the final winner. He believed that everyone would eventually come under his rule, and even if Draco chose to betray now, he would eventually crawl at his feet just like the Death Eaters who betrayed him before his resurrection. Put out your hand and let me see the mark. Upon hearing this, Grindelwald reached out to Draco. Draco's hand holding the hot cocoa shook. Then he put the cup down and slowly stretched out his arm. The red mark of the snake spitting out of the skull's mouth was branded on the white skin. Draco can still recall the fear he felt when he was branded with this mark, and the feeling on his hands as hot as a branding iron. So ugly. Grindelwald frowned subconsciously, and Gandalf nodded in agreement. This is both a skull and a snake. What kind of non-mainstream tattoo is it? How about it? Can you find it? After observing for a while, Gandalf looked at Grindelwald, who nodded. It seems that this mark cannot be traced back to the caster, but it can be traced back to the owners of other marks. As for tracing it back to a specific target, it is a bit difficult. Voldemort can notify all Death Eaters through a dark mark. It is normal for the dark mark to have a magical connection, but this connection is not the type of designated object. Fortunately, the person you are requesting to trace is directly related to Draco, so the problem is not big. Then I'll trouble you. Grindelwald nodded, then looked at Gandalf. Are you sure you are ready? Dumbledore believes that he has surpassed all existing wizards in the dark arts, and I don't think that includes me. Voldemort's dark magic was stronger than that of Grindelwald, which did not surprise Adam. Grindelwald regards black magic as a tool, and studies black magic in order to realize his ideals. Therefore, although he is very knowledgeable and talented in this area, he will not abandon his ideals to study black magic. Of course, I'm ready. Gandalf showed an interested expression. It just so happens that this is my first time meeting him in person. Draco looked at what the two said and seemed to understand. Professor Gandalf was going to see Voldemort. I really have to go there. I have to tell him that he will pay a heavy price for ignoring my words. Not everything in this world can be as he wishes. It was like that then, it is like that now, and it will be like that in the future. Gandalf turned back and smiled at Draco, but before that, I still have something to do. As he finished speaking, Draco felt the dark mark on his arm feel burning, and a look of horror suddenly appeared on his face, but the next moment he felt that this time was different from the previous experience before. He could feel the call from the other side, which represented Voldemort's call. The Death Eaters would use this induction to apparate to the location of the dark mark, but what seems to be calling out now is his dark mark. Draco stared blankly at Professor Grindelwald, who was pressing his dark mark with his hand, and suddenly the resume that Professor Grindelwald mentioned when he introduced himself suddenly came to mind. Gandalf squinted his eyes and captured the two invisible magical connections. The surging magic power spread along these two connections. Great summoning. Crossed out, the follower appears and changes. Pa. Following two voices that sounded almost simultaneously, two figures appeared in the office, with doubts on their faces. Dad? Mom? Draco was stunned for a moment, then rushed forward with gleaming eyes. Although it was unclear what happened, the suddenly reunited family of three still hugged each other excitedly. After the initial excitement, Lucius had the energy to look around and saw the familiar Hogwarts principal's office and the two familiar old men, Professor Gandalf, Professor Grindelwald, Lucius. Pupils contracted for a while, Then he held Narcissa's hand a little harder and greeted her respectfully. Narcissa also woke up and greeted the two people in front of her. She was very perfect in etiquette, but her haggard face and not so glamorous clothes still made her manners a little inferior. They were clearly in Malfoy Manor, accompanied by several Death Eaters, or under surveillance, but they suddenly came here. It must be these two people who did it, but can anyone really do this? Mr. Malfoy, Mrs. Malfoy, hello. I have learned about what happened in Malfoy Manor from Draco, and I feel sorry, and angry about it. Gandalf stood up with a white and slender wand. Obviously, some people ignored my words, perhaps thinking that I was just talking casually, or perhaps thinking that I was incompetent. In short, he reached into Hogwarts and let the war spread directly to the children. Lucius lowered his head and his breathing stagnated. Strictly speaking, the one who proposed that Draco be a Death Eater and let the war burn into Hogwarts was him. Please don't worry, Mr. Lucius. I won't blame you for protecting your children. People often have to make some difficult choices in order to survive. Gandalf's words made Lucius breathe a sigh of relief. Thank you for your kindness and wisdom, Professor Gandalf. Gandalf shook his head indifferently, and then said, next, let's talk about the follow-up of this matter. May I ask if you two are interested in staying in Hogwarts to teach? Chapter 232 Nine Heavens Mysterious Temple. For a moment, Lucius and Narcissa doubted their ears. They looked at Gandalf in a daze, wondering if they had heard wrongly and wanted him to say it again, but they didn't dare. We have to admit the fact that you two can no longer return to Malfoy Manor safely. Voldemort will not allow your existence to trample on his majesty. Gandalf's words were calm but true, which made Lucius look a little ugly, and he couldn't help but start thinking about his way out. At present, there are only two forces in the entire magic world that are capable of protecting you two: Dumbledore's Order of the Phoenix, and we choose Hogwarts. Lucius said firmly. He had been at odds with Dumbledore for so many years before, and if he had any other choice, he would not bow to Dumbledore. A wise choice. Gandalf nodded to the two of them. Hogwarts welcomes you to join, but, Lucius couldn't help but say, as far as I know, there are no vacancies for professors at Hogwarts at the moment. The professors had explained the future teaching plans to the parents at the previous parents' meeting. Is it really a good idea to suddenly change people? And apart from anything else, what do they teach? As a pureblood who inherited the family business and has no shortage of money to spend at home, Lucius asked himself over the years, except for a few offensive and defensive black magics, he has almost forgotten other knowledge. He is not even familiar with life spells because of the existence of house elves. Narcissa is in a similar situation. She is not even as proficient in combat magic as Lucius. No, it's not that you two are asked to be the professors of a certain course. You two who have no relevant experience before probably can't be competent for the responsibilities of teaching any subject. Gandalf looked at Grindelwald. Your job after joining the company is to assist Professor Grindelwald in completing some of the teaching tasks. He has been complaining to me recently that there are too many things to do and not enough people. Grindelwald nodded. The current situation is that each group in each grade and each class has its own progress, and most of the talented young wizards in the middle and high grades have walked their own paths in order to complete the teaching tasks. Even if he has set the general process, he is still a little tired. It's impossible to prepare lessons all day long except for teaching, right? Especially those young wizards in the first and second grades. They have basically no combat power. Entering the first and second areas is mainly to experience the sense of vigilance in the wild and to initially cultivate the tacit understanding of cooperation with other students. Such work can be completely handed over to Lucius and Narcissa to complete. Lucius and Narcissa suddenly realized, and then nodded to their future boss Grindelwald. From Voldemort to Grindelwald, Lucius's expression suddenly became a little subtle. Why did he feel like he was transferred to a different position, or even promoted? Draco was a little dazed. What was going on? How did his parents suddenly get rescued, and then, became his professor? Okay, then Professor Grindelwald will discuss the next matters with you in detail, including salary and other issues. Lucius did care about salary and other issues. He didn't forget that he was actually taking refuge in Hogwarts. He was satisfied with having a safe place to stay. Watching Draco's family and Grindelwald leave, Adam couldn't help but feel his heartbeat speed up slightly. Next, it's time to find Voldemort. Seeing this, Professor Dumbledore's portrait couldn't help but speak. Adam, are you too eager to find Voldemort like this? He wasn't worried that Adam couldn't beat Voldemort, but the problem was that there was no point in defeating Voldemort now. Even if he was defeated, he couldn't kill him, but would anger him instead. At that time, Voldemort might target other Hogwarts students and their families, but the other party has already taken action. Should we not respond? Dumbledore, the old headmaster in another portrait, was very supportive of Adam's return. With Voldemort's ambition, it is inevitable that he will take action against the families of other Hogwarts students. It's just a matter of time. We can't pin our hopes on Voldemort. Adam raised his hand and summoned the dark staff. In this case, if I still hide in Hogwarts, it will give Voldemort the impression that I will not leave Hogwarts, which will cause Voldemort to take further action, so I have to tell him, Hogwarts does not interfere with the outside world, but if the outside world tries to interfere with Hogwarts, I will leave Hogwarts and solve the trouble completely. The portrait of Professor Dumbledore blinked. This does make sense, but can you hold back the excitement on your face? At this time, Adam had already apparated to the hillside not far from Malfoy Manor. Well, this distance is about right. Adam looked at the building surrounded by iron fences in the distance. If the building is damaged, Lucius shouldn't have any objections, right? After all, it's normal for him to be unable to stop fighting, and it's okay even if he has any objections. Well, let's do it. As he spoke, a thick layer of dark clouds had accumulated above Adam's head and even above the Malfoy Manor in front of him, and bursts of muffled thunder echoed among the clouds. It's a pity that Gandalf is a Westerner, otherwise he would have to perform a complete version of the Sword and Thunder control secret. A trace of disappointment flashed across Adam's face, but then his attention was focused on the lightning in the air as one of the most destructive forces in the world, and also one of the most violent forces. The use of lightning requires a certain degree of control, not to mention that Adam needs to do more delicate operations. Boom. In an instant, the sky and the earth turned white, and after the explosion between the earth and the clouds, there was a dead silence. After several seconds, Malfoy Manor in the distance was no longer active. One by one, wizards wearing black cloaks and masks appeared out of thin air, looking around vigilantly. And in the collapsed house of the Malfoy family, with an explosion, Voldemort, who was a little dusty, strode out, his scarlet eyes full of anger. Boom, another thunder exploded, and black smoke came out of Voldemort's body, but in fact, he was not in danger of life at all. Adam couldn't help sighing as he looked at him. Although Voldemort had made himself look like a ghost, these body transformations were indeed something. At this moment, Voldemort was almost furious. His ugly face looked even more distorted and terrifying in his rage. The Death Eaters around him were struck by lightning and were dying. He didn't even know who did it. Oh no, of course there was a suspect, but he didn't know where the suspect was now. Dumbledore and the mysterious Gandalf were both possible, but the former probably wouldn't be so decisive in killing so many people. So, Gandalf, boom. Chapter 233. Just wait. A bolt of lightning struck down, not very lethal but extremely insulting. Even when Voldemort was reduced to being possessed by snakes and eating rats in Albania, he did not feel as humiliated as today. A stream of fiend fire spewed out of his mouth and spread wildly in all directions. Everything it touched was engulfed by the sea of fire in the blink of an eye, becoming nutrients for the growth of fiend fire. There were even a few Death Eaters among them, but Voldemort, who was now furious, obviously did not care. Soon, fiend fire spread to Adam. God of fire, make way. The dark staff paused, and a passage was opened up in the surging sea of fiend fire, and Voldemort finally found his target. Avada Kedavra. A phantom appeared in front of Gandalf, and Voldemort raised his hand and cast a killing curse full of anger, but only shattered a shadow. The next moment, the fiend fire in all directions suddenly changed from orange-red to pale white, and rushed towards Voldemort in the center. Adam had completely mastered the magic of the fire card, and fiend fire, of course it was also fire. Voldemort, who felt that fiend fire had suddenly lost control, did not dare to be careless. After waving his wand, the terrain on his side changed drastically. The suddenly rising ground delayed fiend fire for a moment, and Voldemort also operated away at this time. This is a warning, Voldemort, or Tom. Voldemort, who returned to Malfoy Manor, looked at Gandalf, who walked out of the white fiend fire, and his face, which was almost as white as Gandalf's robe, had an extremely ugly expression. It was not the first time that the fiend fire spell failed to work, but this was the first time. He had his control of fiend fire taken away from him, and it was taken away almost instantly. Without any resistance, this means that the other party's research on fiend fire has surpassed him, and it is far more than a little bit. Is this reasonable? The fiend fire is the most dangerous curse even in the dark arts, but you, the headmaster of Hogwarts, are much more familiar with it than me. Are you the Dark Lord or am I the Dark Lord? Exclamation mark. You old man wears all white, but you are actually very evil. If Adam knew what Voldemort was thinking, he would definitely accuse him of slandering him, but Adam's legitimacy is not yet at the point where he can read Voldemort's thoughts at will. Voldemort, I have no intention of participating in your fight with Dumbledore, but if you continue to attack the children of Hogwarts and try to get your hands on Hogwarts, then be prepared to pay a higher price. Under Voldemort's gaze, Gandalf took out a diary and threw it into the fiend fire, and then the fiend fire all over the mountains and plains instantly extinguished, and Gandalf's figure disappeared along with it. No, Voldemort. A pair headed to the place where Gandalf had just stood, lowered his head and looked around, but there was only a scorched earth on the ground, and even the ashes were burned by the fiend fire to only a thin layer. The reason why Lucius was punished by him was that he had little thoughts. After all, how many of his men didn't have their own little thoughts? The main reason was that he lost his Horcrux. Originally, he still had some luck, and other people might not be able to recognize what a Horcrux was. After all, this thing belonged to the extremely high-end black magic knowledge, but Gandalf's actions just now obviously tore his fantasy apart. Voldemort took a few deep breaths. It doesn't matter, it's just a Horcrux. Did he make so many Horcruxes just to deal with this situation? And he kept the Horcruxes secret enough, and the placement method of each Horcrux was different. On second thought, the destruction of the diary might not be a bad thing. It would make his enemies think that his Horcrux was destroyed and he had become a mortal who could be killed. Then he might be able to take advantage of this opportunity. Voldemort thought so and felt better again, but when he looked down, his mood fell to the bottom again. A dozen Death Eaters were lying on the ground, dying, and next to them there were more Death Eaters who had been struck to death by lightning, and Death Eaters who had been burned everywhere by the fiend fire. You have to know that except for those who were on missions outside, the Death Eaters here were almost all his team. If the remaining few died, he would basically have no one to use. Cursing them was waste in his heart. Voldemort had to use magic to transform and heal the bodies of those Death Eaters. It was just a simple treatment, and these guys were not worth his time afterwards. Voldemort summoned the Death Eaters who were out through the dark mark and ordered them to bring back a few doctors from St. Mungo's to give further treatment to the injured. After asking a Death Eater to find a new base, Voldemort, standing alone on the ruins, thought of Gandalf. Although he was furious at Gandalf's move, Voldemort chose to ignore Gandalf for the time being and concentrate on dealing with Dumbledore, and the boy who lived. That was his biggest worry, and he had to admit that, judging from the result of the quick fight just now, Gandalf was indeed a strong man. If he joined forces with Dumbledore, his situation would probably be even more difficult, but it didn't matter. Gandalf and Dumbledore were both old men, and he undoubtedly had enough time with the Horcrux. All he had to do was wait for those idiots in the Ministry of Magic to help him find a suitable and appropriate opportunity to prove his strength. A brief battle between Gandalf and Voldemort did not cause any waves. Now that the Ministry of Magic has not fallen into Voldemort's hands, no one dares to go to Voldemort's territory to interview. Voldemort doesn't tolerate reporters. There were fewer and fewer good news in the Daily Prophet, replaced by missing reports one after another. The atmosphere in Hogwarts became heavier because some students found familiar names on the list of missing persons people. Another student applying to go back, Professor McGonagall, came to the office with a letter in her hand and couldn't help but lamented, "Poor kid. Well, if there is father's application, then let him approve it and tell him that there will be a Hogwarts Express at 9 o'clock the day after tomorrow. Don't miss it." After checking to make sure everything was correct, Adam nodded directly and agreed to the other party's departure. "Adam, I think we should do something. You can't let them leave Hogwarts like this. You know very well what happened to those who disappeared. These children will also be in danger after they return." Professor McGonagall saw that Adam had directly approved another student's application and couldn't help but said, "We should at least advise them. It would be safer for them to stay at Hogwarts." Professor McGonagall, they know this very well. Adam put down the application letter and looked at Professor McGonagall. "We are professors of the school and have the obligation to ensure the safety of students on campus, but we are also professors of the school and have no qualifications to force students to stay or leave, or to decide their lives for students. Chapter 234 Spring Festival is coming again. I know very well that you care about your students, Professor McGonagall. I believe you have already said similar things to your students in class. Adam sighed, took out a stack of letters from the drawer and put them on the desk. In fact, in addition to these children, there are many other children whose parents have written to Hogwarts to apply for their children to go back, but those children themselves refuse to leave. After knowing the parents' ideas, they wrote to persuade their parents in return. They want to learn skills that can protect themselves and their families in Hogwarts, otherwise going back will only add a burden to the family. Adam looked at Professor McGonagall. Although the students are not yet adults, they already know a lot. Those students who choose to go home choose to leave by themselves, with their own reasons, their own ideas, and the support of their parents. All we can do is bless them. In the end, Professor McGonagall sighed and left, and Adam also understood her love for her students. In addition to the increasingly frequent disappearances, there was also a commotion in Hogwarts caused by the leader of a small group in Slytherin College, Draco Malfoy, who used to have a certain dominance in Slytherin, no longer went out in groups. Crabbe and Goyle, his close followers, also kept their distance from him. The students around him couldn't help but start to eat melons before everyone started to dig up gossip. The junior students brought back the news that Draco's parents had become assistant teachers of the Defense Against the Dark Arts class, responsible for helping to lead the first and second grade students into the Forbidden Forest. What's going on? Exclamation mark. Many senior students were almost shocked. In the past, Draco had boasted about his father, the school director. Now Hogwarts no longer needs the financial assistance of the school director, but without this expenditure, the Malfoy family should be richer. Why do they seem to be bankrupt and want to work in Hogwarts? Then, as everyone inquired, the intelligence leak from Slytherin College showed that the Malfoy family had betrayed Voldemort. Oh, really? It's incredible. After getting this news from Neville, Harry was indeed surprised, but he didn't put more energy on it, and even had no time to think more. His life is now in a mess because of the complicated relationship between his two best friends. Ron was in a relationship, and Hermione was jealous of him. Now Ron ate the chocolate with love potion that was originally given to Harry by someone else, and things became dozens of times more complicated in this situation. Harry even wanted to escape. He had no ability to solve the love-hate relationship between Hermione and Ron, but he had to run back and forth to prevent them from becoming enemies. How could he have extra energy to think about the Malfoy family? In such a complicated situation, Hogwarts ushered in a festival that had not been celebrated for a long time, the Chinese New Year. What's going on? Seeing the lights and decorations in the castle, all the freshmen and even the students who have been in Hogwarts for several years were stunned. Is it another festival? Oh. Could this be a seventh year? Hufflepuff widened his eyes, and a sweet memory came to his mind. I thought we would never be able to experience it again after Adam graduated, but I didn't expect. That's right. Now all the food at Hogwarts is entrusted to the Storm Restaurant, so we can still experience it. Yes, now every meal at Hogwarts is jointly produced with the Storm Restaurant, focusing on deliciousness in large quantity. At that time, after a parent-teacher meeting, the Storm Restaurant directly gained countless loyal customers. Experience. What? Hufflepuff, who had a good relationship with the senior who spoke, couldn't help asking, all the food you can imagine and can't imagine. The senior swallowed his saliva and said, and immediately turned around and ran to the common room. No, I remember that the lion dance stuff is still there. I have to find my roommate to practice. Hufflepuff Jr.? Why is there a Riddler everywhere? In fact, it was not that the senior was deliberately being mysterious. He really couldn't explain it clearly. After so many years, the memory of the Chinese Spring Festival had long been blurred, and only the memory of the delicious food remained. That night, most students met Professor Gandalf for the first time. Good evening, everyone. Gandalf smiled and greeted everyone. Many of you probably met me for the first time. I believe you already know why I don't meet you often, but don't be afraid. If you encounter difficulties and don't know who to find, you can come to the principal's office to find me. I will do my best to help you. After a simple greeting, Gandalf began to mention why he was here. Recently, I have observed that everyone seems to be a little depressed, because of some situations outside Hogwarts, because of the departure of classmates around them. I can't lie to you, I can't pretend to be relaxed and tell you that it's nothing, because that would hurt you, but we can't let negative emotions swallow us, so I decided to restart an event or festival that was once short-lived in Hogwarts. Chinese Spring Festival. From tomorrow, which is the 8th day of the 12th lunar month, Until the 15th day of the first lunar month, Hogwarts will have various activities. In distant China, the Spring Festival is the end and beginning of a year. People believe that these celebrations can sweep away the unhappiness and misfortune of the previous year and welcome the happiness and luck of the new year. Gandalf looked at everyone with a smile. The world will not change because of personal emotions, but a person's emotions can change his or her life. I hope everyone will not give up their lives because of external influences. No matter how the environment changes, living positively will always be better than living negatively. Not everyone can control their own destiny. When you can't change the world, let's make your life more joyful. The next day, the hot and sweet rabbit porridge was brought to the auditorium. In front of the teacher's seat, a huge casserole was churning with sweet fragrance. No matter how much you scoop out of it, it will not be reduced at all. There are even some small ingredients next to it that you can add according to your preferences. Oh my God, that's rabbit porridge, not milk tea. Adam looked at the students in front of him who were surrounding the feeding area and couldn't help but frown. There are so many things in the first place, and you add so much sugar. Isn't it choking? No. Grindelwald shrugged his shoulders and took a sip of the milk tea that looked like rabbit porridge. Chapter 235 Ancient War Tree. After looking at the milk tea that Grindelwald had added several spoons of brown sugar and various accessories, Adam remained silent. Well, after all these years, Adam still hasn't gotten used to the British taste. In his opinion, this lethal amount of sugar can't be suppressed no matter how much tea is added. Let's reduce the tasks given to everyone during this period and let everyone have a good rest. Grindelwald nodded, then smiled. The ecology in the Forbidden Forest has been somewhat affected during this period. It's just time for the Forbidden Forest to recover. The Forbidden Forest is still too small. Having him cast spells to copy magical animals and plants all the time isn't an option either. Adam was thinking about whether to expand the first and second areas to the size of the fifth area, so that the Hogwarts students would not have any impact on the ecology at all, but that would probably mean that first-year students who don't know how to ride a broomstick would have to spend several days to complete a task that could be completed in one class. It is better to put certain restrictions on the students' behavior in the Forbidden Forest. They cannot be allowed to attack magical animals and magical plants that are not related to the mission. The survey team also pays attention to sustainable development when exploring the new world. Adam suspects that the total space in the Forbidden Forest is not as large as the ancient tree forest, and it cannot withstand the undue misfortune of a group of naughty children. As for how to limit, Adam rubbed his chin, going through a long list in his mind, and finally decided to pull out a few of the ancient war trees in the special area and plant them in other areas. As a supervisor, this level should be about the same. The only problem is that the ancient war tree looks a bit big, and shrinking it will affect the combat effectiveness of the ancient war tree. But as an official supervisor, there seems to be no need to hide it. It's such a happy decision. At the dinner, Professor Grindelwald conveyed to everyone the good news that Professor Gandalf had decided that actual combat training in the Forbidden Forest would be reduced in the coming period. Being able to enter the Forbidden Forest was a novel experience for most students at first, but now more than half a year has passed. After the initial novelty has passed, the complex environment of the Forbidden Forest has made many students change their initial views. In addition, there is one more thing that I need to let you know. Grindelwald smiled and said, in order to maintain the environment of the Forbidden Forest in a healthy state that can meet the training needs of all grades, Professor Gandalf cast a spell on some trees in the Forbidden Forest and asked them to supervise you not to do things that are not related to your mission. Grindelwald's eyes swept over each student's body. More than half a year of getting along with him gave him an incomparable understanding of each student's situation, including but not limited to attacking other magical animals, collecting magical plants unrelated to the mission, provoking fights between different groups of magical animals in the Forbidden Forest, casting indiscriminate large-scale destructive magic, etc. Of course, some people may want to ask, what should I do if I am attacked by a magical animal? Is it against the rules to be forced to fight back, Professor? Grindelwald looked at several classmates well prepared and blocked their words. When this happens, I will take you to the principal's office. I think Professor Gandalf will give you a fair verdict. Thinking of the principal, who was a natural telegrapher, some students couldn't help but put on masks of pain on their faces. Fred and George sighed in unison. Alice, it seems we can no longer continue to source materials from the Forbidden Forest. Yes, the price of billywig stings has increased recently, and those delicious berries. Looking at each other, The two of them sighed in unison. Alice, although Fred and George were very anxious when they first knew that classes and exams would still be held this year, but after thinking about it carefully, the two of them found that there was actually no need to worry about this exam. After all, they had already completed their employment. If they failed in the exam, the worst they could do would be to be beaten by their mother. Could they be beaten to death? Therefore, instead of wasting your life worrying and laboriously on exams, you might as well quickly develop a few more prank props before you graduate and officially run Weasley's Wizard Wheezes. After the idea came through, Fred and George completely started to let themselves go, and even started to come up with the idea of a special area in the Forbidden Forest. As a result, Mrs. Molly was invited to Hogwarts for a talk. After coming out of the hospital wing, Fred and George restrained themselves a lot, but they still focused on the treasure trove of materials in the Forbidden Forest. The two of them were at least 25% responsible for the ecological pressure on the Forbidden Forest. Although some students were hit hard, these two pieces of news were good news to most students, so the auditorium immediately burst into cheers. Everyone's behavior in the Forbidden Forest is controlled, which means that it will almost never happen again in the Forbidden Forest that you finally find the mission target, only to find that the mission target has been maliciously destroyed by some classmates with bad personalities, or by seniors who are passing by. Interference situation. After Uther and the others heard the news, they couldn't help but recall the first time they entered the Forbidden Forest. She was as beautiful as a flower, but in a blink of an eye a single tree turned into a forest, and the tree sign sister who turned a large number of Ackermann-Schulas into tree nourishment was still fresh in their memory. Adam cast a spell on the trees. Could it be the tree sign from that time, when everyone was having supper in the evening? Colin asked Adam casually. Tree sign, that's it. The creation of the War Ancient Tree did involve the tree card. To be precise, the War Ancient Tree is actually a kind of wood spirit, a two-dimensional creature in the material and spiritual dimensions, which can freely change its body. The stronger the tree used as the body, the stronger the wood spirit can exert. The ancient tree that Adam spun with the tree card is of course the best choice for the wood spirit, and the combination of the two becomes the War Ancient Tree. After listening to Adam's explanation, several people were silent for a while. It's only been a short time, and you can already create creatures? I thought it was just the result of your manipulation and transformation through the tree card, Uther murmured. Because he had enough mystical knowledge, Uther knew how outrageous this was. This is not like Hagrid's method of pulling a group of magical animals and letting them hybridize. It depends on luck to hybridize what kind of strange species. Like the blasting-tailed Scroot, Professor Scamander would call it a heresy when he saw it. Rather than magical animals, the blasting-tailed Scroots should be called monsters. They don't think they are the same species at all. A male and a female will fight each other if they are put together. In addition, Hagrid was hit hard by the Daily Prophet and the Ministry of Magic during that period, and in the end, the blasting-tailed Scroots did not reproduce the second generation. However, Adam's ancient war tree is different. It has enough wisdom and can even communicate. It is obviously created for a purpose, a creature with a specific function. It's not that exaggerated. The ancient war tree was not created out of thin air. Chapter 236 Neville Druid Longbottom. The birth of the ancient war tree was purely accidental. One of its parents was a creature that existed in the spiritual dimension, similar to the Obscurus, and could not be observed at ordinary times. Adam didn't expect that he would seduce the wood elemental creature by pinching it. After some in-depth exchanges that Adam couldn't understand and didn't want to understand, a brand new magical animal was born. Uther looked at Adam with an increasingly weird look. Do you still want to create creatures out of thin air? Only then did Adam realize that he regretted that the creatures created by the creation cards had to be hybridized with real magical animals in order to truly exist in the world. In the eyes of others, it can no longer be described as Versailles, but rather weird. Ahem, I want to say that the birth of the ancient war tree was also an accident. Adam glanced at the grilled fish in the baking pan. Oh, the side dishes are already cooked, let's eat them quickly. Just as everyone fell asleep and a few people enjoyed their late-night snacks, the towering trees in the special area were pulled out of the soil with the help of Zioke and CP, who were carrying Fupe and Xianpe respectively. Then, these giant trees either grew wings or floated out of thin air, flying towards their respective destinations. Because of the folding of space, the appearance of the ancient war trees did not attract the attention of the students. Only when they walked closer could they see their tall figures, but there are still a very small number of students who have subtle interactions with them without ever meeting them. Strange, what is this? After Using the branches of the poisonous tentacles to solve the target and successfully collect the required potion materials, Neville seemed to see a flash of green light when he was about to put away the poisonous tentacles. Neville looked around warily and signaled Dean with his eyes, "Protect everything, guard it safely, and expel the enemy, Neville." The team is good at cultivating and using magical plants. Seamus is good at various explosive magic, and Dean will naturally work more on protective spells and some functional spells. After a few seconds, Dean shook his head at Neville. Neville frowned. Did he just see it wrong? Putting on the dragon skin gloves, he carefully removed the floating soil around the roots of the poisonous tentacles, and put them away in a bag with a traceless stretching charm. No abnormalities occurred during the whole process, and Neville breathed a sigh of relief. "Maybe I'm too sensitive. Let's go back." "Good, Dean." And Seamus breathed a sigh of relief and embarked on the return journey with Neville. Here Adam was studying the magic of wind cards in the office. The wood spirit attached to the ivy outside the window told him that the child of the wood spirit in a willow tree was lost. The child was lost. A question mark popped up on Adam's head. Although the shortest ancient war tree is more than 200 meters high, the wood spirits in these ancient trees are still children less than 1 year old. How come there are children? After asking, Adam learned that the body chosen by the wood spirit would also affect the wood spirit to a certain extent. There was no way. After all, the wood spirit was not a creature created by Adam himself. He also needed to slowly explore some of the creature's habits before he could understand them. As a plant that can survive by cutting, willow naturally affected the wood spirit and gave it the urge to reproduce. Moreover, Adam did not expect that the wood spirit could complete the task alone. While feeling surprised, Adam asked about the time when the child was lost and the location of the wood spirit, and then summoned a mirror to reflect the various appearances in that area at that time. "Oh? So that's it." The scene of green light submerging into the branches of poisonous tentacles appeared in front of Adam. As a witness who witnessed the birth of the wood spirit, how could Adam not recognize the scene of the wood spirit entering the body? This is strange. None of the first-generation wood spirits were willing to choose magical plants, but this little guy chose poisonous tentacles. Although the wood spirits plus magical plants will create stronger ancient war trees than ordinary plants to the naked eye, Adam will not force them to increase their combat power, so the bodies of the ancient war trees of the first generation are ordinary plant. Is it a factor of the second generation, or is it just a special case? Adam touched his chin curiously, but did not forget the business. He turned to look at the ivy at the window. "Go back and tell Willow that the child is not lost, and now it has found its favorite body, and it is following a Hogwarts student. Although it wouldn't hurt to bring the little guy back and find a new poisonous tentacle to use as its body." Adam could even make it stronger, but Adam had no intention of ruining this unexpected coincidence. To Adam, it was like a surprise blooming in the flower bed that he had not planted. Maybe this coincidence can lead to an interesting story in the end, such as letting Neville, who was originally going to become a sword master, change his profession to a druid. But, thinking about Neville's changes during this period, Adam's expression was a little subtle. Neville's status is still rising. Not to mention his level is constantly rising, and he is already preparing to change jobs. But Harry seems to have stretched his hips a little now, thinking about the recent love-hate relationship between Hermione and Ron, and Harry, who was caught in the middle and didn't even have the energy to save the world. Adam couldn't help but shake his head. So the trio of kingly protagonists with 2 men and 1 woman does have its drawbacks. Neville's encounter with a new wood spirit was just a small episode for Adam. He didn't know how long it would take for the seed to blossom and bear fruit. Now his attention was more on the Spring Festival and the Ministry of Magic's actions. Will the Ministry of Magic come to Hogwarts during the Spring Festival? Holding a 2-sided mirror in his hand, Adam fell into thought. After listening to the other party's intelligence, it was not surprising that the Ministry of Magic couldn't sit still. Voldemort didn't intend to completely push Gandalf to the opposite side before solving Dumbledore after being severely humiliated by Gandalf. Naturally, he had to regain his dignity from other directions. The missing list published by the Ministry of Magic during this period was actually less than half of the real victims. It was just that the wizards who were not reported either rarely contacted others or were simply dark wizards. The disappearance of these marginal people in the wizarding world would certainly not attract everyone's attention. But choosing the Spring Festival, and on New Year's Eve? What's the purpose? It is impossible to say that the Ministry of Magic didn't know that Hogwarts was going to celebrate the Spring Festival. It's not that the Ministry of Magic had planted an undercover agent in Hogwarts, but mainly because some parents of Hogwarts students worked in the Ministry of Magic, so Scrimgeour didn't know from somewhere that Chinese people don't beat children on the Spring Festival, so he chose this day on purpose. Just a joke, but maybe Scrimgeour really considered that Gandalf would not do too much on a festive holiday, so he chose this day. If that's the case, then let's not say he is quite good at judging people. You did a good job. Keep paying attention to such news, mainly related to Hogwarts. No problem, Professor Gandalf. On the other side of the two-way mirror, Percy's face was full of excitement. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelist. There you'll find the original version of this story, and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 237: The huge ship heading towards the iceberg. When did Percy become Adam's man? Actually, it was on the day of the parent-teacher conference. After the meeting with the Ministry of Magic as a Weasley, Percy seemed to be an alien who was incompatible with his family and loyal to power, but in fact he was still a good boy who cared about his family. It's just that he believed too much in the so-called authority and thought that what the Ministry of Magic said was true. His family was deceived by Dumbledore. However, when his family was in danger, he still chose to stand with his family. It must be said that Mrs. Molly is really good at teaching children. In this case, Adam, or Professor Gandalf, let him see what the real world is like, and let him see clearly that the Ministry of Magic is not a smooth road ahead, but an iceberg. So Percy, who graduated with full marks in all subjects, suddenly realized that the Ministry of Magic is now the Titanic sailing on the North Atlantic, seemingly calm, but actually calm. So he decisively abandoned the dark and joined the light. Percy's personality, although he is a bit obsessed with power, he just wants to be a high-ranking official. He is not bad by nature, and he will not be corrupt. Instead, he is very obedient. The future Ministry of Magic is in need of such talents. The two headed off, and Percy became a glorious undercover agent, accumulating merits for the future promotion. Even if you put aside the future of the organization, in terms of personal future, if you want to be promoted in the previous dynasty, you must at least wait for your boss to die or get promoted. In short, you have to wait for the boss to make room, and it may not be your turn. How can it be faster than relying on the merits of following the dragon to directly parachute in? Percy carefully put the two-way mirror that had been hung up close to his body, and then adjusted his clothes and appearance in front of the mirror. Showing a confident smile, he felt that the position of Director of the International Magical Cooperation Department was already waving to him not far away. After Percy walked out of the bathroom, the new Director of the International Magical Cooperation Department, who replaced Barty Crouch, looked at Percy with some surprise because of the recent frequent disappearances. The atmosphere in the Ministry of Magic can be said to be that everyone is in danger. I didn't expect that there are still employees with such high spirits and high confidence in the Ministry of Magic. It is really rare. As time goes by, in the expectation of all parties, New Year's Eve is getting closer and closer. It's New Year's Day. It's really not good to kill people on New Year's Eve. Adam took out a brand new magic robe and put it on his body, looked at the full-length mirror, and then smiled slightly. But it was Ziohea who did it. What does it have to do with me? Through the news of the children studying in Hogwarts, the Ministry of Magic knew that the specific festival activities would start after dinner in the evening, so Scrimgeour and the Aurors came to the high ground not far from Hogwarts. At sunset the sky gradually darkened. Looking at the castle decorated with lights and bright lights in the distance, Scrimgeour remained silent, and his face looked a little stiff when he was expressionless. Minister, it's almost time. An Auror stepped forward and whispered a few words to Scrimgeour. After nodding slightly, Scrimgeour turned around. Let's go. I believe Mr. Gandalf will make the right choice. Half an hour later, the Ministry of Magic stopped in front of the gate of Hogwarts. This is not the gate of the castle, but the gate on the wall surrounding the entire Hogwarts. After the students of Hogwarts came out of Hogsmeade Station, they went through this gate to the Black Lake Ferry or took the Thestral carriage. In other words, they couldn't even see Hogwarts clearly now. They could only walk through a small forest and see a bright and vague shadow in the distance. After trying to unlock the door with a spell again without success and confirming that there were no guards around, the Ministry of Magic looked at each other and finally looked at Scrimgeour. If you force the lock, I will allocate compensation later. Scrimgeour's face was a little ugly. In this way, the arrival of the Ministry of Magic was not so just from the route, But now he couldn't think so much. It was better than not being able to enter Hogwarts after getting permission. Several Aurors breathed a sigh of relief and raised their wands to the iron gate in front of them. Big bang, boom, accompanied by fierce flames. The Auror closest to the iron gate flew backwards in the explosion, knocked down 3 Aurors and became unconscious. The colleagues around him breathed a sigh of relief after checking. It was just injured by the explosion, and there was no danger of life. While he breathed a sigh of relief, Scrimgeour became angry. Who told you to release such a powerful spell? At such a close distance, didn't you consider that you might hurt your own people? The Aurors looked aggrieved and wanted to say that they had controlled the power, but now the Auror who was blown away couldn't have flown backwards by himself. Minister, I think it might be a problem with this door. Beside Scrimgeour, Gadwin Roberts, who succeeded Scrimgeour as the head of the Auror command, raised his hand and pointed at the door. Scrimgeour turned his head, and the smoke and dust in his sight dissipated, revealing that the iron gate did not even show any signs of damage. Scrimgeour's eyes widened in disbelief. Indeed, Gandalf had stressed at the parents' meeting that Hogwarts would strengthen its defenses and promised to cast protective magic on Hogwarts, but Scrimgeour thought that magic actually played a more warning role than a protective role, so he didn't take it seriously at all. In the original book, Hogwarts also strengthened its protection at this time, but if the Death Eaters really came to attack, would the professors have to work together to use super armor to protect themselves in order to block the first wave of Death Eaters' attacks? Scrimgeour, as the former head of the Auror Command, knew very well what kind of protective effects these protective magics could have. Who would have thought that the protective magic exerted by Gandalf could actually have a protective effect? No, it should be said that this level of defensive magic can really have such a wide range? Or is it only on the Iron Gate? Scrimgeour raised his hand in disbelief and cast a spell at the wall far away from the Iron Gate. As a result, the spell bounced back along the same path after knocking down the wall. Fortunately, Scrimgeour was mentally prepared and quickly cast a spell to end the spell, maintaining the standing position of releasing the spell. Scrimgeour looked at the door in front of him, with a bit of confusion in his eyes. This is not Merlin. How could a protective magic that could envelop the entire Hogwarts have such a level of defensive power? Click. At this moment, a crisp sound suddenly sounded from behind the door, and then everyone in the Ministry of Magic saw the iron door in front of them squeak, slowly opening inward. Everyone from the Ministry of Magic? Is this open, as expected of Mr. Minister? He found the flaw in this protective magic so keenly, an Auror who had only been on the job for less than 2 years blurted out in shock, "Shut up!" Scrimgeour's face twitched fiercely, and then he looked at the open door in front of him, suddenly feeling an ominous premonition. The darkness ahead seemed like a beast with its mouth open, waiting for them to come to the door. Chapter 238, Scrimgeour the Clever. Looking at the lion dance performance brought by the special guest Cedric Diggory, Adam applauded and divided his attention on the people in the Ministry of Magic. I was wondering why I didn't come in for so long. It turns out that I was stuck at the first level. Adam was a little embarrassed. The strength of the Ministry of Magic was even weaker than he thought, and it was more than a little weaker. They couldn't break through the protective magic on the gate, which meant that these people couldn't even break the skin of the Mingbo dragon. You should know that the Mingbo dragon, bred after hybridization with the Australian egg white-eye, has a much stronger magic resistance than the Australian egg white-eye. It can't die even if it is hit by a killing curse on the face. If you want to kill it completely, you have to add a few more shots, not to mention the difficulty of using the killing curse to hit the Mingbo dragon in the water. In this way, let alone waiting for Ziohe to appear later, this group of people may not even be able to pass the Black Lake level. Otherwise the Mingbo dragon should not appear, and let the mermaids go to deal with them. But if they can't even hunt the Mingbo dragon, then when Ziohe appears, won't the special effects of his appearance be able to wipe out the whole group? Thinking that the lines he had prepared for so long might not be used at all, the smile on Adam's face gradually disappeared. Going? Or not? Scrimgeour stood there and fell into deep thought. Unlike the new guy with a brain pump, he knew very well that the previous move did not break the protective magic on the gate at all. In this way, the gate that was open to them now was simply a trap without even a grass cover, and a straight hook without even a bait, which was a blatant insult to his IQ. Minister, I think the situation is not right. There may be a trap waiting for us ahead. Otherwise, let's retreat, Godwin suggested to Scrimgeour hesitantly. Scrimgeour was a little tempted, but he had brought out almost all the fighting forces of the Ministry of Magic this time. He had just arrived at the door of Hogwarts, but when they opened the door, he didn't dare to go in. This was in conflict with his usual behavior of wanting to rectify the atmosphere of the Ministry of Magic and change the impression of the Ministry of Magic being weak and incompetent in everyone's eyes. After a while of internal struggle, Scrimgeour still didn't think that Gandalf dared to attack the Ministry of Magic. Perhaps this was Gandalf's way of scaring them off directly, because of his confidence in his years of experience and knowledge, and with a direction to think about. Scrimgeour's thoughts suddenly became clear. Gandalf must have spent a lot of effort to arrange such a powerful protective magic at the gate, and the range must not be that large. The purpose was to make him misjudge the opponent's strength. Now he took the initiative to open the gate again, just to make him think more. In fact, the protective magic on the gate must have been unable to hold up. Right. Thinking of this, Scrimgeour felt that he had seen through the other party's calculations at once, and his previous suspicions now seemed so ridiculous. Straightening up, Scrimgeour showed a somewhat stiff smile. I have seen through Gandalf's tricks, let's go. After that, Scrimgeour took the lead and walked through the open iron gate. Tricks? What tricks? Gadwin was a little confused, but out of trust in his boss who had followed him through life and death for so many years, Gadwin nodded and asked his subordinates to follow Scrimgeour's footsteps. The footsteps made a rustling sound on the fallen leaves, and it was dark all around. Several auras used fluorescent flashes to illuminate the entire team, while being alert to the surroundings. Although Scrimgeour knew that Gandalf would no longer have other means after his bluff was destroyed, he was still very satisfied with his subordinates' vigilance. As expected, they did not encounter any danger all the way to the Black Lake. Mr. Minister, how do we get there now? Hogwarts has anti-apparition magic. There are 3 ways to get to Hogwarts Castle from the Black Lake. The first way is to take a boat across the Black Lake to the boathouse on the other side. This is also the way freshmen take when they first go to Hogwarts Castle. The other way is to take a flying carriage pulled by the Thestrals. Generally speaking, students above the 2nd grade take this way to go to Hogwarts Castle. As for the last way, of course it is the most primitive way, relying on 2 legs to bypass the Black Lake and walk to Hogwarts Castle. Usually no one would do this. It is not the first day of school now. The Thestrals are all in the 4th area of the Forbidden Forest as bosses. Of course, they can't appear here. And walking over, looking at the extremely wide Black Lake, when the Ministry of Magic people arrive, it is estimated that everyone in Hogwarts has already fallen asleep, but the Ministry of Magic people are of course well prepared. Continue to move forward. Several auras found several small boats by the dock. This is the same as before. There is only one magic school in the whole of Britain, and everyone in the Ministry of Magic has graduated from Hogwarts. They know some of the habits of Hogwarts and know that Hogwarts usually leaves a few boats at the dock here for daily access. Fortunately, this habit has not been cancelled because of the change of a new principal, but they don't need to use the boats they brought with them. Untying the ropes tied to the piles, everyone got on the boats one by one, 4 people in one boat, and after the 4th person sat firmly, the boat automatically sailed to the other side of the Black Lake. This reminds me of the first time I came to Hogwarts, and Auror couldn't help but sigh. The leaders were all on the boat in front, so he lowered his voice so he wasn't afraid of being heard. Yeah, I saw something moving in the water at that time, and I was so scared that I fell off the boat. It was the giant squid that picked me up. It seemed like it was just yesterday. Another Auror couldn't help but whispered. The pressure in the Ministry of Magic during this period was really too great, especially since the Aurors, were the front line against the Death Eaters. They had to be on edge when walking on the edge of life and death, and they had to be on edge. During this period, they had to face the public's condemnation of their lack of action. Yeah, I was swimming with a giant squid in the Black Lake. I wonder if it's awake now. The little wizard who used to have to lean out when touching the lake water and be careful not to fall in at all times, can now reach the lake water by leaning against the side of the boat. However, when the Auror was casually fiddling with the lake water, his hand seemed to touch something. Huh? Is it a giant squid? The Auror turned his head and saw only a part of the shiny tail fin passing through the water and then sinking into the water. Is it mermaids? Haven't they always lived at the bottom of the Black Lake? How did they get to the surface? The fact that there are mermaids in the Black Lake has been heard by almost all students at Hogwarts, but few students have actually seen mermaids. Even Slytherin students only know the school legend that they can see mermaids outside the window. Out of curiosity, the Auror couldn't help but lean out his upper body to look at the lake. At this moment, the lake he was looking at began to ripple. Chapter 239 Zio Hey, where are the people? In the sparkling water, the Auror seemed to see a human face. No, not as if. When he confirmed that there was really a pale face in the water, the Auror's face turned pale. He wanted to shout but found that he had lost his voice in extreme fear. The Auror could only use his only finger that could move slightly to pinch his thigh hard, trying to make himself move. What's wrong? His companion noticed his abnormality and asked with a frown. The Auror, who had regained control of his body and could really see the face, swallowed his saliva. It's okay. Seeing his appearance, the merman with his head floating out of the water smiled, and the Auror's face flushed all of a sudden. His skin, which was whiter than the moonlight, was so delicate that it could be blown away. Water droplets kept sliding down his hair onto his skin. His eyes were moving, brighter than the bright waves. The Auror leaned out of the boat like a possessed man, wanting to hug the mermaid. Before his companion could stop him, he watched him jump into the black lake with a plop. His companion, no, do you miss the black lake so much? Are you going to jump in and swim for a while now? There's still a mission now. He hurried to the side of the boat, and before the anxiety on his face faded away, he saw the man floating on the lake, kissing a figure and sinking into the water little by little. What is going on? Before he could see the situation over there clearly, the sound of water coming from below made him look down subconsciously, and he met a pair of curious, green eyes as the other party emerged from the water little by little. The whole face that was so beautiful that it was difficult to describe in words filled his vision and heart, followed by a slender neck and smooth shoulders. He couldn't help but cover his mouth and nose. And there were only two thoughts in his mind. The legend is true. There are really mermaids in the Black Lake. The legend is false. It turns out that mermaids don't wear shells. Plop, plop. Originally, Scrimgeour thought it was the wind and waves hitting the boat, or the fish in the Black Lake, but similar sounds became more and more frequent, and it was like putting vegetables into the pot when cooking vegetable soup. Behind him he turned his head in confusion, but found that there were only 3 boats with people in them out of the 7 boats behind him. Where are the people? Scrimgeour's heart tightened. What? The Auror behind Scrimgeour turned his head and looked back, and also found that the people on 4 boats had disappeared, and his hair stood on end. The mermaids moved from back to front, so no one saw the people in front jump into the water, and the boats they were sitting on were relatively small, so there was a lot of noise when sailing on the Black Lake, and everyone was nervous, so no one suspected that something happened behind them along the way. Where did everyone go? Where else could they go if they disappeared in this place except falling into the lake? But there is no other movement. Even if they were dragged into the lake by the giant squid, there should be a cry for help, right? How about jumping into the lake and seeing so many people disappeared? Who would dare to jump into the lake? The group fell into complete silence, looking at each other for fear that someone else would disappear. When we get ashore, we'll go find Gandalf. Scrimgeour finally spoke out his decision, which made everyone feel relieved. They don't have to jump in to save people now. Think about it, Gandalf can't just kill the Aurors of the Ministry of Magic, right? And I heard that you can't kill people during this festival in Hogwarts. After getting off the boat, everyone looked at the small forest that they had to pass through before they could reach Hogwarts Castle, as if there was a man-eating monster in it. Tisk, tisk, tisk. Hurry up, there's nothing else before the final boss battle. Adam closed his eyes. If these guys dawdle any longer, they'll start singing Unforgettable Tonight in the end. Scrimgeour took the lead and led everyone straight through the grove to the lawn in front of Hogwarts Castle, where the Aurors looked at him with admiration. Let's go. Scrimgeour's face was very ugly. The people of the Ministry of Magic were simply humiliated along the way. With the idea of calling for justice, Scrimgeour raised his hand and released a spell towards the gate of Hogwarts Castle. Then he remembered that there might be a kind of protective magic on this gate that could rebound spells, so he quickly prepared. However, the gate of the castle did not rebound his spell. How? It turns out that it was all bluffing. Before Scrimgeour finished speaking, he suddenly felt a gust of wind blowing from the front. Even if he closed his eyes and raised his hands to resist, the increasing wind force still directly rolled his feet off the ground. The huge wind pressure made it difficult to breathe with his mouth open. After Scrimgeour's spell was interrupted, he decisively cast silent magic to support the armor spell, but it was torn apart by the strong wind. In a few seconds the wind was stronger. And it was getting stronger. The body was swept into the air with almost no resistance, and thunder rumbled in his ears. The biting cold and scorching heat kept passing by, and countless water drops hit him. Scrimgeour's heart was extremely confused. Was he swept into a tornado that suddenly blew up on a calm night, and it's still at the gate of Hogwarts Castle? Is he crazy or is the world crazy? The last thought flashed through his mind, and Scrimgeour fell completely into coma as Zio-Hei, who had regained his body, released the energy suppressed in his body and roared happily. Then he flapped his wings and his huge body rose into the sky. A pair of dragon wings directly covered the entire sky. With a movement of his tail, Zio-Hei landed on the shield outside Hogwarts Castle. He lowered his head and looked at the lawn in front of the castle, and black smoke filled with sparks poured out of the corner of his mouth. The movement of lowering his head hesitated slightly, and a bit of doubt flashed in those ferocious golden vertical pupils. Where are people? Didn't father say that the man was on the lawn in front of the castle? Zio-Hei crawled forward a little, continued to lower his head, and looked at the upside-down castle gate in his field of vision. The direction was correct. Could it be that he remembered it wrong and that this was actually the back door? Zio-Hei grabbed the shield on the castle and looked in another direction, but there was still no one there. Zio-Hei tilted his head in confusion. No, it's okay. Just put the energy away. You did a good job. I'll give you your favorite nuclear reactor to eat at night. Suddenly appeared above Zio-Hei's head. Adam put his hand on his forehead and spoke with difficulty. It's my fault. I shouldn't have pursued such a real and handsome opening. It can be solved with magic cards. But if magic cards are used, why not just use illusions? There is no soul at all. Zio-Hei couldn't understand what his father was talking about. He only knew that he could have a good meal again. Although he was a little unhappy that he had to suppress energy again so soon, he still obeyed obediently. Chapter 240 People and number 039, SXP is free. Forget it. I hope that after the wizard's strength level increases, someone will be strong enough for me to play with it, before my second, no, hot-blooded soul burns out. Adam thinks this should be okay. As the saying goes, a man is a boy until he dies. After adjusting his mentality, Adam looked at the shrunken Zio-Hei, who was now landing on his shoulder, his tail even wagging out of the afterimage. Although both meat and nuclear energy are on Zio-Hei's diet, Zio-Hei still prefers nuclear energy, probably because its actual size is too large and it takes a long time to eat meat to replenish enough energy. But Adam always felt that eating the thing was not as healthy as meat, so he rarely fed it nuclear reactors. It just so happens that we have New Year's Eve dinner tonight. I'll get a few more nuclear reactors for you to eat. You can eat all you want at once. The natural disaster just now seemed to be just an illusion. All traces that should not exist around him were purified and eliminated, and Adam's figure and voice disappeared into the wind. After the sun rose the next day, Scrimgeour slowly opened his eyes. The previous memory was a bit confusing. Scrimgeour sat up and covered his head. It took him a few seconds to sort out the memory. He subconsciously pulled out his wand and looked around, scanning around with vigilant eyes. Scrimgeour found himself sitting at the gate of Hogwarts, surrounded by aurors from the Ministry of Magic lying on the ground. Last night, was it a hallucination? Scrimgeour looked grim and fell into self-doubt after calling up all the aurors around him. Scrimgeour gave up the idea that last night was all a hallucination. There were still traces on the injured aurors. In addition, not every auror who disappeared in the Black Lake has returned. A full 3 of them have disappeared, and those who have returned have traces on their bodies that have not faded away, according to what those people said after they woke up. Although they seemed not very conscious at the time, they could remember that they spent a wonderful night with the mermaids in the Black Lake. Wonderful night. After becoming the Minister of Magic, he came into contact with more information, especially during this period. Hogwarts was also included as an imaginary enemy. After checking the information and knowing what the mermaids from the Black Lake looked like, Scrimgeour looked at his subordinates who looked unfinished. Couldn't help but show the expression of an old man on the subway cell phone. You are really hungry? Can you do this? By the way, those 3 were probably killed by the angry mermaid rather than surrender, so they couldn't come back, right? However, in fact, those 3 people actually fell in love with a shark after they woke up, and wanted to stay together forever. And strictly speaking, the sharks who were just born for less than a year had never seen this scene, so they all follow this just one night. Regarding this situation, Adam can only say that people's XP is free. Although he doesn't understand it, he respects it. He just reminded them that mermaids are different from humans in that they are creatures that attach great importance to emotions and are loyal, and then let them stay in Hogwarts as temporary workers since they are already one of our own. We can't let them be killed by Voldemort. We should stay in Hogwarts for a while. As for the possibility of them regretting and changing their minds later, that definitely exists. Even if they are sincere now, it is still the same. Who can guarantee that they will not change their minds in the future? But Adam had already reminded them of the difference between sharks and humans. If they finally regretted leaving and were eaten by the sharks, that would be their own choice. After checking the orders, it seemed that apart from the 3 missing persons, there were no other casualties. Scrimgeour's face was still ugly, not only because of the 3 missing people, but also because of them. After asking around, no one knew what happened in front of Hogwarts Castle in the end. What several people said was very similar to Scrimgeour's own memory. However, after checking now, there are no traces on them. Is it an illusion? Scrimgeour blushed and threw the thought away. After what happened last night, it would be too self-deceiving to blame it on hallucinations or something like that. I didn't believe it because of my own experience before, but now I still deceive myself after seeing it. What's the difference between that and Fudge, who denied Voldemort's return before? But Scrimgeour raised his head and glanced at the iron gate in front of him. Everything was the same as when they arrived last night. There is no doubt that Hogwarts is now more powerful than he imagined, and he needs to reconsider the Ministry of Magic stance and approach to Hogwarts retreat. As the night passed, the Ministry of Magic team, reduced by 3 people, hurried away from Hogwarts. After walking out of a certain range, they apparated away one by one. After all, I'm still too soft-hearted to take action. Adam touched Sibby with one hand and Ziook with the other, and sighed. I hope they can enjoy life for more than half a month before they are killed by Death Eaters and Voldemort. Originally, Adam really planned to let the sharks kill a few people, but then he thought it was best not to leave such a violent impression on people at Hogwarts. They wouldn't survive long if they went back anyway. By then Voldemort and his men would be killing people everywhere. What does it have to do with him, Gandalf? Ziook snored for a moment and couldn't help but opened his eyes and glanced at Adam wordlessly. Listen to it for yourself. Is this still human language? The next day, Professor Gandalf did not show up. Professor McGonagall introduced several new members of the Hogwarts faculty and staff. They would help Professor Grindelwald share some of the work. Those 3 people were at least working orders. Although their combat effectiveness was a bit weak because of the peacetime, their foundation and talent were still there. Grindelwald could easily pull them and hand over the students in grades 3, 4 and 5, so Professor Grindelwald's life became visibly more leisurely. Adam, I don't think this is a solution. On this day, Professor McGonagall and his team found Adam. After some explanation, Adam knew their purpose. In short, the reform of Hogwarts not only made the students laugh, but also gave the professors a lot of work to do. Originally, everyone was quite enthusiastic and felt that there were finally more educational resources to use. Even if it was a little more tiring than before, it was still worth it to see the students' abilities continue to improve. But now, seeing Professor Grindelwald becoming more and more relaxed, they are all exhausted, especially as the end of the semester is approaching. The professors have to admit that they are running out of energy. Of course, in fact, I wanted to mention this to you, but if I said it, you might think I was questioning your ability, so I didn't mention it. Adam smiled slightly. Hogwarts is currently recruiting talents with outstanding abilities in various subjects to serve as teaching positions. I believe that since you have come to me, you should have a suitable candidate in mind, right? Yes, but Professor McGonagall and the others originally just wanted to add a few positions similar to teaching assistants, but Adam's tone seems to be about recruiting more formal professors. Chapter 241 Hermione, all achievements are gone. That's right, Adam nodded and briefly explained his vision of adding higher-level education to Hogwarts in the future to several professors. So, my expectation for the future of Hogwarts is that Hogwarts will not only be the center of British education, but also the center of academic research. So that wizards who are interested in continuing their professional studies can have a place where they can study without distractions. Regarding the academic prospects of the 4 professors in front of him, Adam had the highest expectations for Professor Snape. Unfortunately, Professor Snape had not continued to study potions for a long time. As for how long exactly, how old is Harry this year? After listening to Adam's words, several professors did not think as much as Professor Dumbledore. They just had more expectations for the future, that Adam said. At the same time, Professor McGonagall suggested that she could recommend several talents in Transfiguration immediately after Professor McGonagall, and then Professor Flitwick, They also gave the names and contact addresses of several of their former proud disciples. Hogwarts Talent Reserve. +1 +1 +1. I will contact them one by one. Adam wrote down these names and then said, "Don't worry about the follow-up education level. The wizarding world is not very stable now. Further reform of Hogwarts must at least wait until Voldemort is completely eliminated. It's natural." The professors also agreed very much with this. As for why Voldemort was eliminated, for the professors present, could there be a second possibility for the outcome of the war between Professor Dumbledore and Voldemort? Perhaps Professor Snape didn't think Professor Dumbledore was certain to win, but in that case there was nothing more he could do after leaving the principal's office. The professors couldn't help but frown on the way back to their offices. "I always feel like I've forgotten something." When they returned to the office and saw the thick pile of parchment on the table, they remembered that's not right. They obviously went to find Adam to reduce their burden, so why did they come back after eating the pie? Fortunately, they then received a message from Adam using his Patronus. "I will contact the talents recommended by you within the next week and arrange for them to complete their onboarding as soon as possible to share your pressure." The professors were relieved. However, the week was still a bit tight, and the professors' load reduction was finally completed in an orderly manner after a month. But it was not too late, as the students just ushered in the review period before the end-of-year exams. Time: the weekend before the year-end exam. Location: a private room in the Storm restaurant. Dong 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 him. This resentment is heavier than a ghost. Please come in quickly. Adam sat in his seat and looked at the dark-faced roommates with a smile. "No, I can't study this for a day." After Cologne took his seat, he leaned directly on the table, and a translucent miniature version of Cologne seemed to appear vaguely from his mouth. "Adam, why don't you just arrange for us to take the S exam this year? If you can graduate early, there's no reason why others can't, right, Uther?" Put the back of his hand against his forehead, looking extremely weak, thinking about the difficult, and increasingly difficult, study life this year. They simply couldn't imagine what the study life that they need to prepare for next year will be like. Fred U0026 George, @%@. "Well, it's not impossible, but S won't give you individual questions just because you haven't taken 7th grade classes, and if your grades are not high enough, your grades will be invalidated." Adam didn't have any objections to things like skipping a grade, not just to his roommates, but to others as well. Muggle geniuses can skip a grade, and there is no reason why wizard geniuses can't. It's just that if Muggles want to skip a grade, they only need to have a high IQ and be able to solve problems. But wizards who can only solve problems are not good wizards. For example, in this year's S, Professor Grindelwald is going to let the students challenge the Horned Camel. The longer they persist, the higher their score will be. If they can defeat the Horned Camel, they will get full marks. Adam glanced at Bernard, silently planning to go back and ask Professor Grindelwald to add one more thing. If the Horned Beast is killed, it will be dealt with 0 points. No problem. After hearing the conditions Adam mentioned, although they were harsh but within expectations, several people breathed a sigh of relief. "Oh? It seems that you are already prepared. In fact, if you have this idea, you can come to me earlier and tell me." Adam tapped the table with his index finger. "Then you don't have to do so much homework." "Oh, we don't know you yet," Bernard said with a smile. "If you hadn't watched us suffer through this year, would you have agreed so easily for us to jump directly to take the exam?" After thinking for a moment, Adam turned his head silently. "Why not? You misunderstood me." Ahem. "The food is served. Let's eat." The next day, the procedures and rules for applying for skip-level exams in the future at Hogwarts were posted on the bulletin board. 1. You can only apply to skip the grade to take the OWLS and S exams, but cannot apply to skip the grade to take the year-end exams of other grades. 2. Applicants must have O scores in at least 3 subjects in the previous year's examination results. 3. If the applicant takes the exam for a higher grade and one of the grades is lower than A, P or lower, all grades will be invalidated and the applicant will be required to repeat the exam next year. 4. Students who agree with the above rules and are still interested in applying for the exam for a higher grade can submit a written application to the dean of their respective colleges within 1 week before the end of year exam. The application form is as follows. Hermione read the announcement and clutched her clothes in pain. It hurts so much. If this rule had been issued earlier, she would have been confident that she could skip a grade. Even if she only skipped 1 grade, but now there is only 1 week left before the exam. Even if she immediately goes to learn the knowledge of the 7th grade, it is too late, and this also means that she has completely missed the opportunity to achieve the achievement of skipping a grade in Hogwarts. As for next year she will be a real 7th grade student. Where can she skip to? Oh, forget it. On the bright side, if she skips a grade, she won't be able to stay with her friends all the time. Hermione looked at Harry and Ron, who didn't care about the rules for skipping grades, and even didn't finish reading them. Her heart ached again as expected. The announcement of the rules for skipping grades did not cause much commotion. After all, it was obviously not prepared for ordinary people, and even those who had the ability needed to be fully prepared in addition to Uther and others who had prepared in advance. Only 2 6th-year Ravenclaw students submitted applications just as the students of Hogwarts were struggling for the end-of-year exams. An astonishing news shocked the entire British wizarding world. Rufus Scrimgeour, the Minister of Magic who had been in office for only 1 year, encountered Voldemort during a mission to chase Death Eaters and was brutally killed. Chapter 242 All Graduation. As the former Auror Minister of Magic, along with more than a dozen Aurors on the mission, they were all annihilated after encountering Voldemort. The strength shown by Voldemort completely shocked and terrified the entire British wizarding world. The voices denouncing the incompetence of the Ministry of Magic in various newspapers completely disappeared, and everyone turned to urging the Ministry of Magic to select a minister who could protect everyone as soon as possible. The editor-in-chief of the Quibbler loudly called for no one in the Ministry of Magic, and Dumbledore, the former headmaster of Hogwarts, was a good choice. The next day, Pius Thickness, the director of the Department of Magical Law Enforcement, was elected as the new Minister of Magic after an emergency meeting. His first order after taking office was to close down the newspaper of the Quibbler. Due to the intense academic schedule, everyone received the news after the exams were over. "Oh my God, as the first exclamation sounded in the hall, the atmosphere of the entire Hogwarts became tense. Adam couldn't help but feel familiar, as if he always felt a similar atmosphere in Hogwarts at the end of each school year when he was still in school for the first few years. Ding, ding, ding. After the flames rose, Gandalf appeared on the podium with a solemn face, and knocked the ceramic cup 3 times with a spoon in his hand to attract the attention of the students in the auditorium. Due to the dangers of the outside world during this period, Hogwarts will not close during this holiday to provide protection for the students. Interested students can write to ask their parents for their opinions on whether they need to stay in Hogwarts during the holidays. I will write a notice for specific matters and post it on the notice board before tonight. After Gandalf finished speaking, he turned his head and looked at the teacher's seat. "Please come to the conference room after dinner. We need to discuss the arrangements for the holiday." Then, Gandalf disappeared in the flames, leaving a group of students looking at each other, and the professors stood up one by one and went to the conference room. The conference room was an extra room Adam arranged that was originally vacant. Now there are several times more professors and associate professors in Hogwarts than before, but it is still more than enough to accommodate these people. Adam did not waste time talking to everyone and started talking about the arrangements of Hogwarts. Hogwarts can provide accommodation for students who have not graduated yet during the holidays. A certain amount of board and lodging fees will be charged, but students can deduct the fees by entering the Forbidden Forest to collect the required materials. This series of decisions all show that Hogwarts only provides shelter for students who have not graduated yet and are unable to protect themselves. Even students from poor families can join, and everything is voluntary and not mandatory. What surprised the professors was that these arrangements did not require them to do anything. Then Gandalf mentioned them. "During this period, all professors can live in Hogwarts, and I will ensure your safety. Hogwarts will provide you with free accommodation during this period, but you need to take care of your own meals." "We will stay in Hogwarts." Lucius raised his hand quickly, and Narcissa nodded, "Yes," and Draco, given their current situation, the dark mark might be raised as soon as they step out of Hogwarts, so it would be best if they could stay in Hogwarts. "No problem," Gandalf nodded, with Lucius taking the lead. Many professors also applied to stay in Hogwarts, most of whom were newly hired associate professors. They were very clear about the chaos in the outside world. Although they didn't think Voldemort would come directly to their door, it would be better to stay in the safe Hogwarts. Not to mention that Hogwarts also had food in the Storm restaurant. Although professors need to pay for meals and there is no deduction option, the salary at Hogwarts is very high, and they live in Hogwarts without extra expenses, so they can still afford 5 meals a day. The announcement was quickly posted on the bulletin board, and owls flew to various places with students' letters. Some families were very moved by Hogwarts' decision, while some families thought that they could better protect their children. Adam had no opinion on everyone's decision. He didn't want to make money from this, but just didn't want to see students facing danger without even the opportunity to choose. In the private room of the Storm restaurant, roommates gathered again. How is it? Did everyone pass? Adam looked at the smiling faces of the few people, and couldn't help but sigh that these guys really understood his personality and habits. Oh my, all the people in our dormitory have finally graduated. Cologne stretched. I can't believe it. It seems like it happened yesterday when I first entered Hogwarts and put on the sorting hat. If you want, you can go back and study for another 7 years now. No, 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 forget it. Cologne shook his head quickly. So, what should we do next? Bernard had a smile on his face. It was obvious that he was happy to get rid of homework and exams. Although the plan is to go to the Ministry of Magic after graduation, the current casualty rate of the Ministry of Magic has dropped sharply after the new minister took office, which is obviously not normal. Recalling the Prophet daily in the past few days, Bernard shook his head, with a bit of sarcasm on his face. Those people are still dreaming that the current Minister of Magic has a deterrent effect on the Death Eaters. I think the current Minister of Magic is probably Voldemort's man, and those who died were Voldemort's way of eliminating dissidents. That's right, so let Voldemort and the Order of the Phoenix fight for the time being, and you can go back to accompany your families. Adam looked at Eugene and Colin. If you need a safe house, tell me at any time. Forget it. Adam hesitated for a moment, took out 2 gem buttons from his pocket and handed them to the two. This is the door key to the safe house, leading to 2 different safe houses. Take it for self-defense. Although their strength is much stronger than that of the Aurors, they are still not enough to face Voldemort. Eugene and Colin did not hesitate to be polite with Adam, and each took a gem button. I still plan to go out and prepare for the future. Eugene was holding a ruby button. After playing with it for a while, he looked at Adam and said, "My grandmother was the head of the Auror Command before, and she can provide me with some connections." Although her son and daughter-in-law did not enter the Ministry of Magic, Mrs. Lauren has not bothered to maintain the Ministry of Magic's personal connections for a long time, but she still knows a few old friends, and old friends who have been kept until now without utilitarianism are more reliable. It's up to you, just pay attention to safety. As the Minister of Magic who is going to lead the reform of the Ministry of Magic, Eugene actually has both advantages and disadvantages in gaining the support of the old upper class. But Adam can help him ignore those disadvantages, as long as Eugene does not suffer any other losses in the process. By the way, I've thought about it carefully, and I still feel that the Department for the Regulation and Control of Magical Creatures is not suitable for me, Cologne suddenly said, but I don't plan to stay at home to manage rare animals. I plan to travel around the world like Professor Scamander did, to observe and study the magical animals in nature. Professor Scamander will definitely be very happy. Although Cologne changed his mind, everyone was happy that he found what he really wanted to do. Adam nodded and said, "If you find a magical animal that has never been discovered before, remember to write to me." Chapter 243 Meeting of the Order of the Phoenix. Until the Horcruxes are completely eliminated, Voldemort is truly unkillable. Members of the Order knew this, but others did not. Therefore, after Voldemort became more and more unscrupulous and the Ministry of Magic seemed unable to fight against Voldemort due to heavy casualties, everyone, under the secret guidance of the new Minister of Magic, pointed the finger at the Order of the Phoenix. After all, the Ministry of Magic protected everyone before, but now so many people have been killed, including the Minister of Magic. What did the Order of the Phoenix do? It is not that the Order of the Phoenix has done nothing. The reason why it seems like it has done nothing compared to the Ministry of Magic is because the Order of the Phoenix and the Ministry of Magic are not of the same magnitude at all, and the threat they pose to Voldemort is completely different from the Ministry of Magic. The exposure of any member of the Order of the Phoenix may lead to the pursuit of Voldemort himself, but everyone doesn't know this. They only know that their life safety is under threat now. Death Eaters have frantically attacked many Muggle-born wizards, and even caused frequent turmoil in the Muggle world. Everyone has experienced firsthand why people dare not mention the word Voldemort. Number 12 Grimwald Place, the headquarters of the Order of the Phoenix. Sirius paced back and forth in the restaurant with an irritated face. "Could you please be quiet, Sirius, MRS. Molly couldn't help but make a sound, but she had been washing the bowl in her hand for more than 10 minutes. and she was still washing the same area. Ling dong. Almost at the same time as the doorbell rang, Sirius's eyes lit up and he rushed to the door and opened it. Tonks and Kingsley walked through the door, leading Harry, Hermione, Ron and Ginny. "Oh, you are finally back, MRS." Molly put down her bowl and rushed to the four of them. After observing them carefully, she finally breathed a sigh of relief. "Why do you all have to come back?" "Dumbledore thinks Hogwarts is safer. Anyway, you must be exhausted from the journey. I prepared grilled sausages and bread." "No, we ate in the car. Eat as much as you can, MRS." Molly could not help but bring the four of them a plate of toast with sausages. "Just get home safely, Sirius." Face no longer had the anxiety it had just now, and he patted Harry on the shoulder during dinner. Harry glanced at the people on the table suspiciously. "Where are Fred and George?" Click, MRS. Molly twisted the knife she used to cut a barbecue, making a metallic clang sound on the fork. "Well, they wrote back and said that they have graduated now, their careers have just started and they need to run, and they will not come back for the time being." Arthur Weasley explained for the two. "It's actually understandable, isn't it? After all, the letter said that they now have their own store in Diagon Alley, so it's normal to be a little excited." Harry blinked. After Adam graduated, his business really got bigger and bigger. "I suspect they just said they didn't dare to come back because they didn't do well in the exam," Ron muttered. Right." After hearing Ron's words, Mrs. Molly, who was still angry at Fred and George for not coming back, clapped her hands. "I remember that your report cards now require parents to sign them. Let me see how you did on the test." Ron's expression suddenly froze. "It's not bad, MRS." Molly frowned when she heard this. "What do you mean it's okay?" "If it's okay, it's okay. If it's not, huh? It seems I came at the wrong time." When Professor Dumbledore was taken to the dining room by Fawkes, Mrs. Molly was giving Ron a loving caress. "How dare you, ahem, Dumbledore, you're back, MRS." Molly let go of Ron, who ran upstairs sobbing. "Well, Molly, it's best to be calm when communicating with your children. Your grades were not perfect back then. I don't know if it's because he retired and handed over all the responsibilities to Adam. No matter how bad the situation is, there will be someone to tell the truth. Professor Dumbledore feels that his mentality is becoming more and more." Old Mrs. Molly's smile froze. "But at least I didn't get a D in any of the subjects. Dreadful was terrible, one level lower than failing, and only one level higher than a troll, and Ron actually dared to get a D in 2 subjects. There was no way around it. Professor Firenze was not Professor Trelawney, and Ron would get slapped with a D if you wrote a random omen of death for himself as before. As for where the other D came from, Ron used apparition during the final exam of the Defense Against the Dark Arts class. He originally wanted to show off his skills and get a high score, but ended up splitting. At this moment, the flames of the fireplace suddenly turned green and rose up, and Professor Snape emerged from it. "What are you doing, Professor?" Dumbledore blinked and dropped the topic. "Okay, everyone is here, let's talk, Professor." Snape brought back the results of his observations during this period. Nagini, the big snake that Voldemort had always carried with him, was suspected to be the last Horcrux. Suspicious. Sirius frowned and was about to say something, but was interrupted by Professor Dumbledore. "It's normal, Sirius. No one can completely confirm whether a living creature is a Horcrux just by observation, Professor." Dumbledore pointed his index finger on the table, stared deeply into the void in front of him, and fell into thinking and memories. "Let's analyze it. Given Voldemort's character, what were the Horcruxes he chose to make before, in addition to the first diary that was hastily made into a Horcrux, and the one that was accidentally created and unknown to him? He chose the relics of 3 of the founders, and a Deathly Hallows. All of them are extremely valuable, commemorative and symbolic meaning. Then, as a descendant of Slytherin and a Parseltongue, the possibility that he would choose a big snake to make a Horcrux is very high, everyone. In the Order of the Phoenix nodded, but even so, it's still impossible to completely confirm. Right, there was nothing Professor Dumbledore could do about this. As he said, no one could confirm whether Nagini was a Horcrux just by looking at it. He could only choose the one with the highest probability. So, when do we act? Sirius took out his wand directly. "Don't be impatient, Sirius. We have other preparations to make before taking action." In order to prevent Sirius from revealing the truth, Professor Dumbledore and Professor Snape did not tell him that Harry was also a Horcrux. This matter was actually Professor Dumbledore's biggest headache: how to ensure that nothing happens to Harry but at the same time eliminate the fragments of Voldemort's soul in him. Severus, I want you to ask Adam what method he used to deal with other Horcruxes before, after the meeting. It was time for Professor Snape and Professor Dumbledore to communicate alone. Professor Dumbledore looked at Professor Snape and said, although he said that method cannot be used on living animals, I thought it might be possible to do it in other ways. Even if it doesn't work, it can at least provide some inspiration. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story, and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 244, Professor Dumbledore and Number 039's Plan. Because he is on vacation and does not have to go to work every day, Adam is out of touch from many people. Not in the office, not in the room, not even the owl could find him. Professor Snape accepted the new task assigned by Professor Dumbledore, but God was not good, and Voldemort suddenly assigned him some tasks, so that Professor Snape had no time to find Adam. In desperation, Professor Dumbledore once again used the portrait to try to contact Adam, to no avail, so he had no choice but to find Grindelwald, thinking that maybe Grindelwald could know where Adam was. Grindelwald really knows. What do you want from Adam? Grindelwald looked at Professor Dumbledore and raised his eyebrows. I have some questions for him, Professor. Dumbledore looked at Grindelwald, or Professor Grindelwald. He learned about each other's deeds this year from Harry and Ron. It must be said that he had a little understanding of Grindelwald changed just a little bit. I don't think so. Grindelwald shook his head. Adam is now deep in the Forbidden Forest. If he doesn't come out, no one can find him, Professor. Dumbledore's expression was a little strange. He was just in the Forbidden Forest. Even if the Forbidden Forest was expanded by Adam, no one would be able to find it. Twisted limbs, bandaged arms, wings with golden pupils, and a mist-like mouth. Along with the terrifying screams, darkness enveloped the Forbidden Forest, and flames engulfed the Forbidden Forest. However, this doomsday scene disappeared together with a monster in the next moment, leaving only devastation on the ground. Sure enough, it still doesn't work. Adam looked at the closed Chuanpe book in his hand and sighed. Creatures can truly survive in this world by interbreeding with the creatures that exist in this world, but rules cannot. Even if you use the creation card to forcibly crossbreed creatures with the power of rules, you will lose. The creation disappears after the supportive card ability. It's easy to create a simple monster with huge energy and body, at least for Adam now. Whether it's an ancient dragon like Ziohe, an ancient titan, or a Zerg in StarCraft, you only need to write down enough detailed information, and then let the other party hybridize with real-life creatures. But if you want to create those existences that can distort the rules of reality, you can't. Abnormalities are not good, contained objects are not good, and strange stories about rules are not good either. No matter how weak and harmless such an existence is, its existence itself is a violation and distortion of the rules. Without the support of Adam, it cannot exist independently in reality even for a single moment. Second, it is equivalent to wanting the metal to blossom and bear fruit without the continuous interference of other external forces. The current Adam cannot resist the rules on his own. I'm just too greedy. I guess to achieve this step, I have to make at least one additional Adam card. Forget it, let's complete our own anchoring first. If Adam's idea can succeed, then he can do more when anchoring, but unfortunately it doesn't work, so he can only go according to the original plan. After putting away the book and walking out of the special area, Adam looked outside the Forbidden Forest in surprise, and then his body disappeared from the spot. Some time passed after Adam left, and there was a tremor somewhere in the special area. A small bump was raised on the ground. Black Eyes observed the surroundings through the gap, and then this carpet-like creature dragged the broken body, quickly fled the place. Professor Dumbledore, are you looking for me? Hearing Adam's voice, Professor Dumbledore looked at him and wiped the sweat from his head. Adam, how many times have you enlarged the Forbidden Forest? It's not even a few times. In fact, you are almost at the end. You can't move forward just because of other reasons. The area in front is protected by magic similar to the Red Heart loyalty curse. The essence of the Chidden loyalty spell is actually to hide some information in another dimension. People turn a blind eye to it and listen to it. No magic can recognize the information on the other side of the dimension unless it is actively informed by someone who knows the information. The red loyalty charm. No wonder I can't contact you in any way, Professor. Dumbledore sighed. The Forbidden Forest was indeed developed quite thoroughly in Adam's hands. The development rate had already exceeded 100%. Then, Professor Dumbledore, let's go to the office and discuss it in detail. Although Adam came out this time to prepare his own elixir, he was not in such a hurry. However, Professor Dumbledore seemed more eager. No need, I just came to ask you something, Professor. Dumbledore told Adam his purpose. Adam suddenly realized that it seemed that the Order of the Phoenix was becoming a little anxious, but the Horcrux was found quite accurately. As for asking him how to solve Harry's problem, it's easy to say that Adam will provide all support except help to the Order of the Phoenix. Let me use these two little animals as an example for Professor Dumbledore. When Adam stretched out his hand, a mosquito and a spider appeared in his palm. These were all summoned by Adam using the summoning spell, otherwise there would be no pests in Hogwarts now. Please look, Professor. Dumbledore looked at Adam's palm, and the two bugs suddenly began to twitch at a certain moment. After careful observation for a while, Professor Dumbledore dispelled the idea that they were twitching. The mosquito was actually lying on the palm of his hand and twisting its limbs and wings, while the spider began to flutter its legs. This is, I exchanged their souls. Adam clenched his fist, and the two insects disappeared in his palm. This is the method I use. I exchanged the soul of the precious Horcrux that I want to keep with another ordinary thing, such as a leaf or a stone. So the precious treasure no longer has Voldemort's soul, and as for the leaf and stone that became a Horcrux, then just deal with it casually. When the carrier is no longer precious, there are too many ways to destroy the Horcrux for both of them. Is that so, Professor? Dumbledore sighed. This really couldn't be used on Harry. Otherwise, where would Harry's soul go? Adam was right. This was indeed a magic that could only be used to deal with dead objects that were made into Horcruxes. After a moment of silence, Professor Dumbledore spoke again. He talked about Harry's current state and his understanding of Voldemort's current situation, including that Voldemort's existence continued Harry's passive resistance charm, which should have expired when he became an adult. With this insurance, Professor Dumbledore was not at ease. After all, the continuation of the passive resistance charm was just his speculation based on his own knowledge. He couldn't let Harry risk his life just based on this, so he proposed another insurance, the Elder Wand. The Elder Wand will not harm its real owner, Professor. Dumbledore's eyes flickered, and he slowly told his plan. Voldemort is too superstitious about power. He thinks that I am more powerful than him because of the power of the Elder Wand, so he dreams of getting the Elder Wand, and once he gets the Elder Wand and believes that he has become the master of the Elder Wand, he will definitely keep using this wand. As long as he believes that he has really become the master of the Elder Wand. Chapter 245 Dumbledore, in order to avoid a loss of 500,000, I decided to invest 200 million. Based on the characteristics of the Elder Wand, how to make Voldemort believe that he has become the master of the Elder Wand. Of course he was asked to kill the previous owner of the Elder Wand with his own hands, but Voldemort did not dare to face Professor Dumbledore. While he was superstitious about the power of the Elder Wand, he also believed that his power could not exceed Professor Dumbledore, who held the Elder Wand, so ownership of the Elder Wand required another pass for Voldemort. This person must be able to gain the trust of Professor Dumbledore and be able to defeat Professor Dumbledore in a sneak attack. At the same time, he must be able to defeat Professor Dumbledore even if the opponent has mastered the Elder Wand. For Professor Dumbledore, this person must be able to gain Voldemort's trust to entrust such an important task, and at the same time, this person must not betray Voldemort and leak his plans. These two conditions intersect with only one person in the entire wizarding world. Professor Dumbledore was still continuing to describe his plan. In order to ensure it was complete and make Voldemort believe that the ownership of the Elder Wand had definitely changed hands, he needed to die in the hands of that person, and that person would most likely be killed by Voldemort in order to keep it safe. So, Professor Dumbledore, in order to kill Voldemort, or to be precise for Harry, you not only want to risk your own life, but you even want to hook up with my potions professor and head of Slytherin House? Adam looked at Professor Dumbledore speechlessly. Even if Professor Grindelwald hadn't made a deal with him before, even if he didn't have a way to solve Harry's soul fragment, he would have chosen to sacrifice Harry directly after knowing the news. In order to protect one soldier, one car and one soldier must be put in. The difference between the two ends of the scale is so great that there is no need to even hesitate. I'm too old, Professor. Dumbledore shook his head, but Professor Snape is still very young, let alone, then. He saw Adam take out a bottle of blood-red liquid from his pocket. The elixir of immortality refined from the Sorcerer's Stone has been personally proven by Mr. Nico Flamel to allow people to live to at least 600 years old. After all, Professor Dumbledore, you have only lived less than 3 years of your life. 1%, Professor. Dumbledore was stunned for a moment and couldn't help but said, is this what Flamel left behind? No, I refined it. This is a completely different situation. Professor Dumbledore looked at Adam and sighed. It seems you have more secrets than I thought. Secrets make people more attractive. It's a pity that Professor Dumbledore couldn't understand Adam's pinch. He just nodded in agreement, and then said, believe me, Adam, both Severus and I volunteered to sacrifice for Harry, and we would gladly die for it. Believe me, Professor Dumbledore, Harry is willing to die to destroy Voldemort and avenge his parents. He is still young and does not yet understand the beauty of life and what sacrifice means. It is precisely because we realize the beauty of life that such sacrifice is more cruel, isn't it? Adam shook his head. In any case, I will not support your actions. Your and Professor Snape's sacrifice is a loss to the entire wizarding world. After speaking, Adam raised his eyes and looked at Professor Dumbledore. Professor Dumbledore, you should be able to see what I want to do. I want to improve the overall strength and research level of the wizarding world. I will not sit back and let this happen. Don't underestimate my determination. There was even a hint of threat in Adam's tone, which made Professor Dumbledore couldn't help but sigh. The former students threatened him, but it was to prevent him from sacrificing himself to death. You are hiding it from him and letting him watch you sacrifice. Is it for his own good? If Harry knows the truth, will he be happy that you protected him? The conversation changed and Adam mentioned Harry again, and even if you sacrifice, Harry will still have to go to Hogwarts when school starts. Judging from the current coursework at Hogwarts, he probably won't have time to leave Hogwarts before graduation, so at least he has to wait. Only after he graduates will Voldemort find the opportunity to attack him. There is still a year to go. Think of another way, Professor Dumbledore. If Voldemort is difficult to deal with, then deal with the Death Eaters first. If all his followers are cut off, then no matter how powerful he is, he will not be able to make any trouble. Adam turned around to leave, then paused. During this period, I will also think about ways to see if I can find other ways to resolve the soul fragments in Harry's body. Whether it can be found depends on the situation between the Order of the Phoenix and the Death Eaters. If all those in power of the old forces were pulled down by Voldemort and Professor Dumbledore, then Eugene would soon be able to use the method Adam found to kill Voldemort and become the new savior as for not conforming to the prophecy. Anyway, now that the prophecy hall has been smashed, only Adam still has a backup in his hand. Isn't it Adam and the others who have the final say on what the prophecy will be? The final right of interpretation belongs to the new Ministry of Magic. In the blink of an eye, the 2-month summer vacation passed. The work at Hogwarts began in an orderly manner, and Adam also made preparations during this time, since laying down anchor points in 3 dimensions at the same time is no less difficult than refining a magic stone. It requires a lot of knowledge and calculation of the right time, place and people without running into luck, and it is squeezed by the 3 dimensions. Danger of scum, so Adam chose to lay anchor points in 3 dimensions separately, and then combine them into one with the help of the magic stone. The process was greatly simplified, and it was very safe. The risk was entirely borne by the magic stone. The price is only that compared to the former, it requires the consumption of a magic stone. The magic stone turned into an anchor point is equivalent to being lost forever and can no longer be used to refine longevity medicine and pure gold, and if it fails, it will just completely scrapping a magic stone. After more than 2 months of preparation, Adam began to try to build his first anchor point, the anchor point of the spiritual dimension. The material dimension is the easiest for Adam to study, and he was also the first to figure out how to lay an anchor, but Adam did not want to anchor his material dimension so early. There is no other reason. After the material dimension is anchored, Adam will not age or grow up, but Adam is still in the developmental stage. Although he is not a primary school student like Elio, he still looks like a tall boy. Adam feels that he can wait a few more years to stop growing taller before anchoring to the material dimension. Forget about Eugene, who seems to have some giant blood, and when he went to a party during the summer vacation, he found that he had grown to 1.9 meters. What if Uther and Bernard, who are 1 or 2 centimeters shorter than him now, will be taller than him in the future. What to do? Although he doesn't have to change his height, Adam doesn't want to miss a millimeter of the height he can grow. Chapter 246, Mind Dimension, Anchored. With the help of the 2 Adam cards, Love and Hate, Adam's research on the spiritual dimension can be said to have made great progress, and by anchoring the spiritual dimension, Adam will no longer experience spiritual aging, and will always remain in his youth, the most creative and active time. He will not be numb to emotions, and will not lose his curiosity about the world. Although this youth's middle school second will also be fixed, Adam thinks there is nothing wrong with it, so it is natural that the spiritual dimension became the first anchoring target in an extremely spacious safe house that has been thoroughly purified without a trace of debris. Zyok and CB showed their true bodies and stood at the 2 opposite corners of the square room. Duang. The end of the dark rod touched the ground lightly, and a complex magic circle with a radius of tens of meters unfolded under Adam's feet. The sun and the moon at both ends of the magic circle just fell under Zyok and CB's feet. Zyok and CB narrowed their eyes. In their eyes, with Adam as the center, the whole world seemed to become more vivid and colorful, so they quickly closed their eyes and calmed their minds. This is because within this range, the spiritual dimension has become extremely active due to the influence of the magic circle, and even affects the material dimension to a certain extent. As the saying goes, appearance is determined by the heart, and the power of the mind does affect the senses of matter to a certain extent. If someone breaks into the magic circle at this time, I am afraid that all kinds of emotions and thoughts will go out of control immediately, and thus fall into a completely crazy state, eh? Doesn't this magic circle have a built-in sin effect? Can it be used to create things like outer gods and ancient gods? The little flying inspiration is just a flash, and it is stored together with other inspirations generated in the process and waits to be read one by one after the matter is over. Adam is now closing his eyes and focusing all his attention on establishing the anchor point. Once the anchor point is set, Adam's future spiritual state will be determined accordingly, and naturally there is no room for carelessness. Adam must meticulously and bit by bit wrap up everything in his spiritual dimension, not missing any point, and then use specific magic to make it his own anchor point. Buzz, with Adam as the center, a roar that does not exist in the material world spread in all directions, as if it exploded directly in the sea of subconsciousness. The thinking of Zyok and SPI, who were closest, even stagnated for a while. Perhaps after a moment, or perhaps after a long time, Adam slowly opened his eyes, and he looked no different from before. But if you block the senses of the material dimension and compare the perception of the spiritual dimension to vision, then you can see that in the world where all kinds of thoughts and emotions are intertwined, there is also an Adam standing there, just like the material dimension. Is this the feeling of anchoring the spiritual dimension? Adam checked his state and said with some surprise, "Is it because I have studied too many creatures in the spiritual dimension? Why do I feel like I don't just lay an anchor point in the spiritual dimension, but become a two-dimensional creature of matter and mind?" According to the original idea, the anchor point of the spiritual dimension should be somewhat similar to Voldemort's Horcrux, and Adam did refer to part of the process of making the Horcrux, but Adam's current state seems to be a little different from Voldemort, being able to directly perceive everything in the spiritual dimension, just like the 5 senses of a person in the material dimension, and even seems to be able to do some operations that only affect the spiritual dimension and do not involve the material dimension. Voldemort should not be able to do it, right? Apart from other things, Adam has now really become a natural mind controller, and he is the kind that can directly reach the essence. Even the disguise of brain occlumency cannot escape from him. If Voldemort had such an ability, he would not have been deceived by Professor Snape and even lost his life. After some analysis, Adam felt that the production of the Horcrux was probably too crude. With the help of a soul entering his own soul, what was produced was just an anchor point that could not get rid of the material dimension and was relatively shallow in the spiritual dimension. It's embarrassing to say it out, and his upgraded anchor point is different. If it is not stronger than the Horcrux, it would be a shame for those obscurus and dementors who contributed their own strength in his research. Hey, in this case, if I can further improve my anchor point in the material world, can I make myself stronger? Adam had an idea, but then immediately gave up the idea. No, forget it. The anchor point of the spiritual dimension is because I am complete as a human in the spiritual dimension, but it is not complete enough compared to the creatures in the spiritual dimension that I studied, so I can be strengthened, but humans are creatures in the material dimension. If they want to be strengthened, they can only give up a part of it and adopt other things to fill it. that is, to transform themselves physically, and this kind of physical transformation, if there is no clear goal or a definite path, it is easy to go wrong when playing by yourself. If you don't become stronger, it's a small matter. If you play yourself into a 3-flower gathering top, or a fairy, then it will be a lot of fun. In terms of physical strength, Adam already has the blessing of the Clow Cards, such as the Power card and the Fighting card. There is no need to do anything extra. It is enough to follow the steps to obtain an immortal body. After anchoring the mind dimension, Adam's thinking speed was greatly improved. After a lot of doubts, analysis, hesitation and decision, it only took a second. Zio K. Sibi, Adam looked up and was surprised to find that Zio K and Sibi were in a semi-faint state. And from the mind dimension, how come it looked so much like his own handiwork, but he hadn't used it since he got this ability? Oh, it seemed that when he just finished anchoring, he seemed to have done something unconsciously. Could it be that he did it at that time? Ahem. It's okay then. With a snap of his fingers, Zio K and Sibi suddenly woke up and looked at Adam. Hey, Adam, are you done? Yes, it's done, Adam observed that Zio K and Sibi's memory of the process of completing the anchor point just now seemed to be affected a little. He moved his fingers to smooth out the waves, and the two children's memories of that period suddenly became clear. Oh, is it done? It looks like there is no difference from before. Zio K curiously circled around Adam for a few times, stretched out his claws and scratched a few times, but it seemed that there was no change. Seeing Zio K like this, Adam suddenly remembered something and jumped into the appearance of a Maine Coon cat. The anchor point of the spiritual dimension did not turn into a cat, but it was not a big problem. Adam closed his eyes, and after a few seconds, the anchor point of his spiritual dimension also turned into a cat, exactly the same as the material dimension, without the slightest flaw. During this process, Adam sorted out his newly acquired abilities. Wait a minute, these abilities seem a little familiar? Chapter 247. The Real Adam? Problems in the Forbidden Forest. The only ability that the mind anchor brings to Adam is the ability to interfere with the mind dimension. However, in actual application, this ability can achieve different effects according to needs and scenarios, and thus be more intuitively classified into different abilities. For example, the ability to perceive directly in the mind dimension gives Adam a more essential power than legitimacy, and can directly observe the other person's mental state, emotions, thoughts, and even deeper thoughts and memories. Another example is the control of his own power in the mind dimension, which allows Adam to perfectly grasp his own emotions and thoughts, and to perfectly disguise himself in the above aspects that can be observed by him. It's like Adam disguised himself as a cat in the mind dimension before. Even if others use legitimacy to read his mental world, they will only get the result of this as a cat. This ability is a must-have for spies. Since he can disguise himself as a cat, he can naturally disguise himself as someone else. Unfortunately, Adam has not encountered a scene where he needs to be a spy. In addition, Adam can also use the power of the mind dimension to influence others, change their emotions, personality, and even memory and cognition, and in this process, if the other party does not have a considerable power in the mind dimension, he may not even be able to detect it at all. Based on these three main aspects, it depends on Adam himself to develop what abilities. Even if Adam expands his control over the spiritual dimension with his anchor point as the center, his power in the spiritual dimension can become stronger and stronger, but this is not the point. The point is, the sense of déjà vu of these abilities is a bit too strong. Why do they all look so familiar? Adam smacked his lips and felt that his chest was a little empty for some reason. He should wear a cross or something. Mind reading, hypnosis, mental disguise. Damn, am I really Adam? Although he was surprised, Adam didn't care too much. The audience path is the spiritual path, and it is normal to have some similarities with the abilities brought by the anchor point of the spiritual dimension. Just like Esdeath and Kuzan, they both look like ice players, but in fact, their abilities are not related at all. Although the paths they took were not exactly the same, it did not prevent Adam from learning from the audience's inspiration when developing his abilities. He did not use illusion cards or card transfer. He walked back to the principal's office at Hogwarts. After sitting down, Adam had a subtle expression. You can really do it. Psychological invisibility, which means that my power in the mind dimension is at least sequence 6. Oh, no. Adam flipped through his memories. Sequence 5 is Dreamwalker. Now he has gained a lot from reading those dark attribute Clow Cards. He will probably be able to achieve similar abilities soon after studying them. As for Sequence 4 Manipulator, Sequence 3 Dreamweaver, Sequence 2 Insider, Adam can basically achieve these abilities if he does not insist on relying solely on the power of the mind dimension, but that would be meaningless. The improvement of one's own abilities, the improvement of skills, and the improvement of relying on external objects, under the same degree, the sense of achievement brought by these three improvements is successively reduced, and Adam's improvement this time is the first one for him. Various operations on the mind dimension are more like instincts, like raising his hands and blinking, rather than skills like magic. However, the acquisition of this instinct still depends on the improvement of skills and self-research, so, science and technology are indeed the primary productive forces. After sighing, Adam slightly changed his next plan and raised the priority of studying the spiritual dimension to the highest level. Originally, he thought that there was an anchor point in the spiritual dimension, and the anchor point in the material dimension could be laid at any time. It can be said that he did not need to be too anxious in this regard since he had achieved longevity. It would not be too late to do it after a few hundred years, but now Adam does not think so. This more essential improvement is really a bit irresistible. Is this the reason why some people are addicted to fitness? Adam could not help but look down at his abdominal muscles, which showed some traces because he was thin enough, and secretly thought about whether he should also work out before anchoring the material dimension to train the mermaid line anyway. Even if he no longer works out after anchoring, his figure will not be out of shape. Taking some time to work hard to make himself have a good figure in the future. It seems not a loss. Thinking of this, Adam stretched out his hand, and a book slowly emerged from the void. In order to facilitate his management of Hogwarts, Adam used the card creation to make a Hogwarts management log, which automatically records all events with a large enough impact within the scope of Hogwarts. In this way, when Adam comes back from playing for a while, or when he goes out for a while like this time, he can intuitively understand what major events have happened in Hogwarts during this period, without having to spend extra time to learn through other channels. Adam left Hogwarts on September 21st, and the log naturally started recording from September 21st, but Adam's eyes froze instantly after opening the log. September 21st, the last Dementor in the special area disappeared. This is the third species that has been completely wiped out in the Forbidden Forest. If the murderer's Voldemort is the only one left, it is the fourth. Severus Snape is in class. Adam's eyes stayed on the first paragraph and frowned. 3 species in the special area have been completely wiped out, not a single one left? No, this is just what happened on September 21st. Today is already. Adam turned the diary to today's page. Today is October 4th. Adam flipped forward again and breathed a sigh of relief. In the end, only 5 creatures were completely destroyed, and there were only 6 including the Voldemorts. Moreover, none of them were magical animals in the core area, but only creatures on the edge that were inconvenient for students to contact. But Adam did not completely relax because of this. Looking at the description in the diary, it was Voldemorts who killed these creatures. Why didn't he remember that Voldemorts had such strength? What's more, among the creatures that were destroyed, there were Dementors. As creatures in the spiritual dimension, being broken up is not considered to be destroyed for Dementors. To be able to do this, it is difficult for Adam not to think about the experiments he had done on Voldemorts. Summoning the dark rod, Adam took a step to the sky above the special area and looked down. The special area in the naked eye was normal, and even because of the disappearance of Dementors and Nagdu Panthers, the environment of the special area has even improved a little. But it is not the case from the perspective of the spiritual dimension. Amid the rich and colorful emotions and thoughts around us, a void is so conspicuous. Chapter 248, Purification and Reunion. This is, Adam landed on the ground, looking at the open space in front of him and lost in thought. The staff of darkness in his hand paused, and the dead leaves flew up to reveal the hidden body different from the imaginary monster, although the Voldemort bat in front of him looks a bit, well, not normal. That is, the dark body is covered with large and small golden purple-like markings. It is as Adam expected before. The situation is already much better on the way here. Adam recalled several of his experiments with the Voldemort bat. Among them, there may be unexpected surprises that he did not expect. The only one was the one where the Voldemort bat and the Terminator bird gave birth to a Terminator bird. Only an accident caused by this experiment could lead to the death of the Dementor. Other Voldemort-related experiments may involve the spiritual dimension, but Voldemort bats always appear as test targets in the last part of the experiment, and accidents cannot occur to Voldemort bats unexpectedly. The Terminator bird and the Voldemort bat produced the Terminator bird and were erased after losing the power of creating cards. But the Voldemort bat that mated with the Terminator bird gained part of the Terminator bird's power. But isn't this power a little too weak? Adam stretched out his hand, and the Terminator bat floated into the air. These markings on the body probably come from the eyes of the big bird. Does it mean that if one creature is eliminated, another one will appear? I haven't found any effects so far. The digestive organs seem to have gained the power of a bird's beak, and even dementors can swallow it as for Takatory's scale. Adam turned around and couldn't find it. He didn't know where he had inherited it, and he didn't even see the bandage. After a round of observation, Adam looked at the terminal bat and made a judgment. This was probably a malnourished version of the terminal bird that was castrated again, but you can't be so arbitrary. The power of abnormalities is just an appearance. Their essence is a certain kind of human thought, and the essence of the terminal bird is dystopian thought. Dystopia, as the name suggests, is the opposite of utopia's idealized equality and freedom, and is a totalitarian social vision full of surveillance and dictatorship. The core idea of dystopia is also the source of the three powers of the terminal bird. So can we think that the idea of dystopia is not big enough, which is why the power of the terminal bird in this terminal bat is so weak? Even if the previously bred terminal birds cannot survive in this world, is it also because there is not enough support from dystopian ideas? Although dystopian literature has appeared very early, and it sprouted in Britain at the feet of Adam, the environment in special areas is different after all, and the power of dystopian ideas from the outside may not be able to break through the ingot and enter the special area. Adam opened the log. And there was indeed a record of the Terminus Voldemort trying to leave the special area, but although this can explain the abnormality problem, what about the contained objects and strange rules? Could it be that they are not complete and their strength actually comes from external support? Recalling certain information, Adam frowned, but still gave up any further curiosity. It's okay to conduct experiments in a special area with heavy blockades. He is not afraid of opening the blockade to conduct experiments. Things that can be created by the original card will not exceed the upper limit of the Clow card, but this small broken ball at his feet may not. To say that the tough little breaking ball is indeed quite tough, but to say that the fragile little breaking ball is actually very fragile, especially the two-legged beasts living on it are even weaker than the small broken balls. Closing the diary, Adam looked at the Terminator volcano as if he had guessed his fate. The final Voldemort bat struggled to escape, but disappeared from the world the next moment. Not only that, the entire special area was purified from the inside out by Adam, and all abnormal influences, traces and existences disappeared. Let's improve ourselves first. Well, let's start settling down from tomorrow. I'm going to. On Christmas Day, 5 people from the dormitory had a long-awaited gathering in the Storm restaurant. When Bernard walked in, he almost thought he had entered the wrong room. Young Lynn, we haven't seen each other for only half a year, right? What have you all experienced during this time? Well, how to put it? It's hard to put it into words. Colin, whose skin had darkened several degrees, and whose originally round jawline had become as sharp as a knife, sighed. Come over and sit down first. Adam will probably be here soon. Let's wait until everyone is here. I'm also very curious about your experience. Bernard took a closer look at Eugene and Uther. The change in their appearance was not as big as that of Cologne. The main reason was that their temperament had changed drastically from before. They seemed to be more majestic. Uther, you have your ears pierced. Well, I thought after I returned to Egypt. Uther touched the emerald earring on his left ear. This is quite popular over there. Bernard looked at the gold necklace around his neck and the bracelets on his arms again, and couldn't help but replace the windbreaker shirt and jeans that Uther was wearing now with the ones that Uther wore when they first went to Egypt. A dress. So, do you usually wear such shiny things in Egypt? I feel like I feel visual fatigue when I'm around you. Let me take a look at that necklace. Okay, wait a minute, it does seem to be a little flashy at first, especially in the sun. Uther untied the necklace, recalled it and then shrugged. And no one stays in the sun all the time. Oh? It seems I'm late. When Adam opened the door, he saw Uther's equipment constantly dropping, and Bernard, Cologne and the others were passing them around to admire. Adam curiously reached out and picked up the emerald earrings on the table, and looked at them against the candlelight. No, we just arrived too. Cologne was even stunned when his peripheral vision swept over Adam's arm. Did he seem to have seen something horrible? Then he reacted, stretched out his hand to pull Adam's arm down, rolled up Adam's sleeves, and couldn't help but say on the spot, F. Merlin. Uther dropped the last piece of jewelry, turned his head and looked over, and couldn't help but widen his eyes. Adam, have you gone to the gym? Well, about 2 months. Adam moved his arm looking at the bulging biceps and the faintly bulging blue veins on it. The four were silent. This is 2 months of training? If you say you've been training for 2 years, people will believe it. Then Uther looked at Eugene suspiciously. Eugene, do you have any fitness secrets that you didn't tell us, but secretly told Adam? Eugene. No, I don't. Don't talk nonsense. I don't have any other activities except fishing, so, Adam has also gone fishing during this period. Uther touched his chin, thinking whether he should also develop this hobby. Originally, Eugene was probably the one with the best figure among the few people among the rest. Only Colin had some muscles because of playing Quidditch. Uther, Bernard and Adam. Let's not talk about them, but now Adam twisted his body and ran ahead of Colin. Chapter 249. Half a year of experience. Looking at Adam, who put down his sleeves and wore a magic robe with sun, moon and stars, everyone sighed. Just looking at it like this, who would have thought that this wizard robe, how can it be so exaggerated? Adam smiled and shook his head. Even with the help of the power card and the fighting card, plus the effect of eating ream cattle, he has only been training for 2 months after all. It is already very good to have obvious muscle marks, but he is already quite satisfied. If he really wants to train to look like that muscular devil muscle man, it would be too scary. As they talked, the dishes they ordered began to come up one after another. Everyone shared their experiences during this period while eating. My past 6 months are probably the most mediocre, right, Bernard counted on his fingers. Besides staying in the safe house with my parents, we went to Hungary to visit a relative, and we didn't do anything else. Wow, that's really ordinary, but there's nothing wrong with an ordinary life. Cologne took a bite of salted egg yolk chicken wings and complained, in order to make my parents recognize that I am serious about wanting to be a magical animal researcher, I have been studying in the Amazon forest for the past 6 months, or surviving in the wilderness. I thought that the magical animals in the Forbidden Forest created by Adam were complete enough, and after the experience of the Forbidden Forest, I should be able to easily cope with various outdoor conditions. But Cologne didn't expect that the Forbidden Forest lacked the most dangerous point in the real wild environment, the unknown. What magical animals will be in the XTH area of the Forbidden Forest is fixed, and in order to facilitate students to complete tasks such as collection, several major resource points are also fixed. In other words, although there is indeed a certain degree of uncertainty in the situation that will appear in the Forbidden Forest, the approximate possible range is still clear. But the wild is different. Especially the primeval forest like the Amazon, where there is no human intervention, and everything is the result of countless factors of nature coordinating with each other for millions of years. Those ferocious beasts, or Cologne, was adept at dealing with magical animals. Poisonous mosquitoes, leeches falling from leaves, and even parasites in the bodies of captured prey were the real killers. Cologne rolled up his sleeves to show everyone his arm, where there was an exceptionally fair skin. This place was bitten by a small insect before. The area around the wound suddenly turned purple-red, and it was spreading around. I could only cut off the meat and apply medicine. Fortunately, I brought enough white fresh essence. The area of the skin was half the size of a palm. Everyone couldn't help but gasp when listening to Cologne's description. If you cut such a large piece of meat, you can probably see the bones, right? Even so, do you still insist on becoming a magical animal researcher? Eugene looked at Cologne. Of course, otherwise wouldn't my piece of meat be thrown away in vain? Cologne put his hands on his waist and said confidently, and then suddenly remembered something. Oh, by the way, I brought a gift for Adam. Huh? Is Adam the only one with a gift? Bernard raised his eyebrows and looked over, then saw Cologne take out a glass bottle that looked very familiar to them from his bag because of Adam. Every time they see this kind of glass bottle now, they will inexplicably drool. Buzz. At this time, the creatures in the glass bottle, 2 palm-sized mosquitoes, flapped their wings. Hiss. What is this? Bernard narrowed his eyes. How can such a small mosquito make the sound of a helicopter propeller? The Amazon-specific mosquito is a magical animal, and it is not even recorded in Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them. It doesn't even have a formal name. The name given to it by the locals is roughly translated as ghost, so I temporarily named them ghost mosquitoes. Ghost mosquitoes not only disturb people's sleep at night and make people neurasthenia, but also the parts where the ghost mosquitoes suck blood will have severe and stubborn itching symptoms. This symptom will probably last for more than 10 days. Even with a local medicine, it will take at least 3 days to subside. The most important thing is, Cologne looked at the glass bottle and introduced it, with a lingering fear in his eyes. When the ghost mosquito really wants to suck blood, It will not make a sound, and they can also perform short-distance phantom shifts like the ball-eating bird, so as to break through all the protection and tents. Adam glanced at the glass bottle, thought for a while, and looked at Cologne. So, you gave this to me because, after truly experiencing the wild environment, I found that mosquitoes can pose a great threat to wizards, but the forbidden forest of Hogwarts is still lacking in this regard. Cologne's face was full of righteousness. I think the younger students of Hogwarts really need experience in this area. Cologne, I really have to look at you with new eyes. You are still the most ruthless. Bernard couldn't help but applaud Cologne. What you said makes some sense. Adam put away the glass bottle and said with a complicated expression, after their offspring reproduce, I will make specimens of the pair of ghost mosquitoes and place them in the school history exhibition hall, and write that this is a gift from you. This is not necessary. Cologne's smile froze on his face. Hogwarts is the only magic school in the UK. If everyone knew that he brought a ghost mosquito to Hogwarts, wouldn't the British wizarding world be full of wizards who wanted to skin him alive in a few decades? Leave some for me after you breed it, Bernard called out. I think this magical animal has great potential to be the jailer of Azkaban. Indeed, isn't it more humane than the Dementors? Eugene also sighed. If the juniors and seniors who graduate in a few years go to Azkaban because of crimes, they will definitely think of their youth and regret their crimes when they see those ghost mosquitoes. Uther looked at the people in front of him in horror, especially Eugene. How come even you, a man with thick eyebrows and big eyes, followed them and learned bad things? Exclamation mark. Fortunately, ghost mosquitoes can only live in rainforests and have high requirements for environmental humidity. There is no need to worry that this thing will appear in Egypt after Cologne. Uther and Eugene also shared their experiences. Although they were not as plain as Bernard, they were not as exciting as Cologne in general. The lives of the two have been somewhat similar in the past 6 months. They are both preparing to become the Minister of Magic, but Uther is preparing to inherit and is mainly familiar with the affairs of the Ministry of Magic, while Eugene is preparing to take over and is mainly expanding his network at this time. Eugene's advantages as the freed owner of Rowena Ravenclaw's crown and Ravenclaw's eternal friend are revealed. In addition to Mrs. Lorne's friends, many wizards from Ravenclaw are willing to establish friendly relations with Eugene. Although wizards from Ravenclaw are not particularly present compared to Gryffindor and Slytherin, and are not as diverse as Hufflepuffs, they are pioneers in all aspects of research in the wizarding world and have a great influence on the wizarding world. For example, several scholars who are now keeping correspondence with Eugene are not only members of research institutions and editors-in-chief of academic journals, but are also members of the Wizengamot. Adam paused slightly while drinking Coke, attracting everyone's attention. What's wrong? Nothing. Adam's expression was a little strange. Just now a Death Eater wanted to attack on the first floor. It's okay now. Chapter 250. Is this the big explosion? Who set off the thunderbolt explosion? On the first floor of the Storm restaurant, the dining guests were all stunned in place, their eyes focused on the same position. Just now, there was a wizard who was still wearing a hood indoors. He suddenly stood up, pulled out his wand, and recited that frightening spell. Green light even appeared on the wand. Everyone is familiar with this. During this period, similar things may happen everywhere in the wizarding world. A certain Death Eater suddenly goes crazy and starts killing people just when everyone was looking at each other in horror, not knowing who the other party's target was. In short, the Dark Wizard is now all over the ground. Everyone couldn't help but look up at the ceiling, where the thunderbirds soaring in the thunderclouds were vividly depicted. But no matter how lifelike it is, there is no reason why a painting can actually release thunder and lightning. Right, sorry, it was just a little accident. Wearing a silver mask embedded with gems, Regulus slowly walked down from the second floor. With a wave of his wand, a whirlwind swept and cleaned up the Dark Wizard fragments all over the floor. Please rest assured that Storm Restaurant will do its best to ensure your personal safety while dining. Storm Restaurant will serve each of you a dessert later. I hope the sweet taste can soothe your hearts. This was not the first time that everyone had encountered a terrorist attack by a Death Eater. Unexpectedly, this time they could get a dessert for free. Instead of leaving, the guests heatedly discussed the scene just now. After taking care of the guests on the first floor, Regulus arrived at the end of the corridor on the second floor. After passing through a wall and walking to the end again, Regulus knocked on the door lightly and pushed it open. Boss, I already know. Adam waved his hand. Do Death Eaters come here often during this time? It's not that often. but there's no pattern. Regulus sighed. Sometimes it's after a muggle-born wizard, sometimes it's just to make some noise, to kill someone to vent. The Death Eaters are so crazy, and there are even dark wizards among them who take advantage of the chaos of the situation to unleash their own lawlessness. Anyway, since Gandalf took away most of his men, Voldemort now attacks anyone who comes as long as you claim to be a Death Eater and are causing chaos and killing mudbloods. Then even if you don't have the dark mark on your body, you are still a Death Eater personally certified by Voldemort. Vampires, banshees, hags, werewolves, giants, these species that originally lived far away from humans thanks to the efforts of wizards have slowly returned to human society with the help of Voldemort. Of course, there are also species that the Ministry of Magic originally regarded as dementors of political achievements. As time went by, Regulus lamented more and more. Why did he believe Voldemort's lies in the first place, thinking that the other party just wanted to restore the glory of pure blood? He is clearly a lunatic who creates chaos. The current boss does have that ability and wisdom, and he is also a pure blood, but it is a pity that he does not seem to be interested in restoring the glory of pure bloods. It seems that this dream of mine is destined to be impossible to fulfill. Regulus sighed and thought about it. He heard from the boss that the land next door had been bought and it would be renovated into a bar in a while. By then, there was hope that another dream of his would be fulfilled. After that party, there was no news from Bernard and Colin. The last time they communicated with everyone through a double-sided mirror, they said they were going to the Amazon together to settle down. Forget about Cologne. I don't know why Bernard wants to go with him. Relatively speaking, the relationship between Eugene, Uther and Adam is relatively stable. The former took advantage of this period of increasing chaos and relied on his own strength to repel the dark wizards near his home, vaguely forming a gathering place to independently resist the dark wizards. Adam liked this and provided some equipment support. As for where these equipment come from, it turns out that Fred and George's alchemical talents for prank props were probably inherited from their father. Mr. Weasley was very good at adapting Muggle items to function properly in the wizarding world, but he had no idea what his abilities actually meant. After Adam had an in-depth academic exchange with Mr. Weasley as Gandalf, he successfully learned the spell that could prevent the electronic signals of Muggle products from being interfered by magical force fields. Although the effective range of this spell is very small, if it needs to be used on large equipment, then this anti-interference spell needs to be cast on every place. But Adam waved his hand. This is not a problem compared to the effect this spell can have. This price is not even a side effect. Professor Gandalf immediately said that Mr. Weasley, who invented this curse, deserved to be awarded the Order of Merlin First Class by the Wizarding World. The entire Wizarding World will remember your name, Arthur Weasley. You have made the entire Wizarding World take a historic step forward. Before leaving, Gandalf held Mr. Weasley's hand and said sincerely, "The entire Wizarding World will become a better place because of your invention, Mr. Weasley was deeply moved by this. This was the first time anyone besides his family supported his hobby. I must continue to work hard to make the Wizarding World a better place." Boom. A giant vaporized directly in the firelight, along with parts of the bodies of 3 surrounding giants who were standing too close. It works great. Eugene held a telescope in one hand to look at the situation on the opposite hill, and held a two-way mirror in the other hand to report the experimental situation to Adam. But I heard from Bernard that this thing seems to be quite expensive. It's a bit of a loss to exchange one for 4 giants, and it may not be able to achieve such results when it is actually used. This time, the 4 giants stood close, but it may not be the case next time. It doesn't matter, as long as it is easy to use. Don't worry about the money. Adam glanced at the box of anti-tank mines next to him, and with a wave of his hand, it became 32 boxes, nothing else, as many of these as you want. By the way, have you used up the shells I gave you before? It is really difficult to compare which one is more lethal, magic or guns. Anyway, if you hit it accurately, it will kill you in one shot. But when facing group targets, especially for Eugene and his team, the killing efficiency of guns is so high that magic can't catch up. During this period, Eugene's camp has made some reputation, so that the Death Eaters who really have the dark mark have paid attention to it, such as the Carroll brothers and sisters. However, when they called the Dark Wizards, the giants and several female demons to attack the camp, the sudden fire under the feet of a giant and the sudden empty team made them both sluggish. However, Eugene and his men would not be polite to the Death Eaters. They aimed at the direction of the fire in the dark night and flew several RPGs directly over. Boom. The continuous sudden attacks directly tore the Death Eaters team apart. But the remaining people didn't even know what happened. Is this the big explosion? Who set off the thunder explosion? Exclamation mark. A group of lawless guys were angry and afraid. The explosion ignited the grass and illuminated the surroundings, but there was no human figure around, not even a ghost. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.